says you're live. So welcome to Humane Mind Live, episode 111. Don't be an LD-FPS, and I will get to what that means in a little bit into this. So, yeah, we were gone last week. I got sick again, although this time it was only for a couple of days, but and we weren't here yesterday because my brother was sick, but now everybody's feeling good, so hopefully we can keep this as a weekly thing. Alright, so I got a couple of things on the agenda today, so I'm just gonna read them off. So, first thing I want to talk about is, but in America, college, it rapes you. Then, 420 crimes and Miss Demeanors, as in, never mind, that's a terrible pun. I'm gonna just keep going.
Just get to
Impeach, acquit, repeat. Doesn't quite work. I was thinking more like lather, rinse, repeat, but saying it out loud, it doesn't quite.
Yeah, maybe if you sound like the Old Spice dude.
Yeah. Impeach, acquit, repeat.
Diamond.
Anyway. They're now diamonds. Alright. So this... So the next topic is The View from Halfway Down. That is a reference to BoJack Horseman. But it's not so much the BoJack Horseman. I'm going to tie that in with the DNC right now and what they're currently doing. Because it's like when I was watching the episode, I was like, dude, that's the... Like, it came out... Or they did the series finale, and it came out around the same time as the acquittal. And I was like... Yeah, that's kind of what most Democrats are feeling like right now. So I'll go over that. All right. The DNC Plan and other fairly stupid fails. I don't know if you... That was probably a bad one.
Remember like a story. It sounds like a storybook.
Yeah, the Stinky Cheese Man and other fairly stupid tales.
That's right. That's what that sounds like.
Yeah, that's talking about the Iowa caucus and the Emoluments. All right. So I didn't stop with the puns because we're also going to talk about R.I.P. Nancy or Pelosi finds State of the Union terrible.
That's a pretty bad pun. I mean, that's like dad joke territory there.
Yeah, but I couldn't help it. I kept hearing everybody, like Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, and they all said, Nancy ripping up the State of the Union was terrible, and I'm like, and nobody's going with the, she's literally tearing it. Nobody's making that. All right, whatever. I guess I have to.
It's writing itself now.
All right. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So the first thing, I don't have an article for this, but I'm sure you're kind of aware of this, or because everybody was talking about it last week. I was hoping to talk about it, last Monday, and then it was just woke up sick, like feeling fine Sunday, went to sleep, woke up, and was just out of it. But there's a case, and I forget the name of the college now. It's been a week since everybody was talking about it. But a guy goes to a party, kind of social gathering. He and this girl start getting friendly with each other. They start doing a little, more than just friends type things. She wants to have sex, and he puts the brake on it and says, no, we probably shouldn't. And she keeps pestering him. That's when he turns on his phone and starts recording the entire thing. She accused him later of raping her or sexually assaulting her. He lost his degree. The college wouldn't accept his video submission of what actually happened, and he is now suing them.
They didn't. They said they would not listen to the recording. They denied it for being presented as evidence.
Yeah. How dare you provide objective evidence that she was not raped?
This is like the stupid mattress girl, except for that guy was smart enough to have it just recorded, probably because he's familiar with this thing, type of stuff happening, and they still wouldn't listen to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like...
I reported on the recording, he's multiple times stated, you know what, yeah, I am attracted, but I think you've had too much to drink. Why don't you just head for bed? I'll leave. Like multiple times, he's just saying, yeah, you're pretty. It's not that, but I think you're drunk and I don't want to take advantage. I want to head out.
Yeah, and so the other thing everybody was mentioning is she had a boyfriend.
Yeah.
So she was, uh, I don't know whether she was drunk or slightly buzzed or whatever, but was actively trying to cheat with her boyfriend. And when she told her boyfriend that this guy had sexually assaulted him, the first thing the boyfriend says is, "How much did you have to drink?" Like he's like, "Oh yeah, this is not."
This is not new. I've heard this before.
She's. It sounds like she's got a history of doing this sort of thing.
Yeah.
At least if that's, if your girlfriend comes up to you and she's like, "Oh, last night some guy was taking advantage of me," and I was like, the first response should be, "Oh, I'm gonna bury this guy. I'm gonna smash his head into the wall," sort of thing. But his first response is, "How much did you have a drink?" It's like,
well, okay. So,
either he doesn't care about her at all, or he's kind of like, "Yeah, this is par for the course."
I could see this being three, at least semi-potential things happening here. One, this is entirely new and her boyfriend's just an ignorant a-hole, not willing to listen to anything. That's a potential. Two, this is semi-familiar and he understands that maybe she gets a bit flirtatious while drunk,
Mm-hmm.
which that would bring about the obvious response. Or three, this is something he's just extremely accustomed to and not just suspecting, hey, you've been in some situations before that you were kind of answered, but it's possible that this happens often.
Yeah.
She just drinks, starts getting really flirtatious, and he already knows about it. And if that's a repeat occurrence, that makes it highly probable that could be his first response is, "How much did you have to drink?" So it's just kind of stages of how long has he been exposed to that type of activity. If not at all, then it would think his first response is, yeah, I'm gonna go meet that dude face to face. That no one does that to my girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
The protective instinct.
All right. Other things that reek of this is not real. This is not a legitimate claim. She did not go to the police to get a rape kit. Every people who were talking to her, so she was telling people the next day that she had been assaulted or raped or something along those lines, and the people she talked to said, "Yeah, go to the police, get a rape kit," and she refused. And it's like, all right, that right there, that reeks of no. This is not a legitimate rape case or an assault case. This
Yeah.
this is somebody who's looking to tear down the other person. And I mean, granted, if you reading the whole story and it, granted, this could be wrong. It not likely considering there is audio, at least audio, if not video, to back up the guy's claims that nothing happened. He was getting out of the situation.
Yeah. Multiple times he kept saying, "I think you're a little too drunk. You should go lay down, and I'll go. I'll head back to home or back to my dorm or wherever." But he was trying to remove himself from that.
Yeah, so it seems like everything is in his favor right there. And it seems like she was just using this accusation to try to save her own reputation, or as a, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. This payback for not giving her what she wants, or as some people have suggested, maybe she was ashamed of herself and she's trying to get in front of this. She's thinking, "Oh, he's going to go and brag about the stuff they did do," because they did do some stuff that's
Question: are there rape kits for men?
Maybe, like, because they could collect DNA evidence, but I would say it's a lot less obvious. I mean, granted, if backdoor shenanigans were part of the equation, they could probably use a rape kit to detect that sort of thing, because there would be definite damage back there. That's
so ultimately from just the physicality of it, there tends to be more damage on the female aspect if it's unwanted, as if they're struggling or fighting against, versus what may happen to a dude if he's doing the same thing. Additionally, because of human anatomy, anything that may still be there that they can try and get a DNA swab and see if there's external DNA, this stuff that they actually test for, that's less likely because male genetic, male anatomy is on the outside.
Yeah.
Rubbing on his underwear, his pants, or whatever, and it's either rubbed off, it's gone, or just because it's exposed to air, it's no longer viable for proper testing. So yeah, I've never even actually considered, are there male rape kits? I don't know. Trying to look it up on Wiki. I guess there is potential. Well, yeah, I don't know.
Potential, but not as likely or as probable as with women.
Yeah.
Like, unless of course backdoor shenanigans. Then you have the same logic that it's an internal, so it's contained as opposed to external. But yeah, this guy is suing the college, and it sounds like he's going to win. And so here's the other thing about the situation. This guy is a former Marine. He went to college to get his bachelor's using his GI Bill. The college gave him his degree and retroactively took it away from him. So because of that, he cannot use his GI... If he still had money left over in his GI Bill, because you have up to a certain limit.
Yeah.
So the GI Bill, it's up to a bachelor's or a certain amount. Now, you can take college courses using the GI Bill towards a bachelor's, and you could, like, halfway through decide, oh, I don't want that bachelor's, I'm going to switch to another bachelor's and start working towards that other bachelor's degree. But since this guy is already under degree, that's it. He, like, according to the if he had anything left over in his account, he cannot use any of it towards another type of degree. His GI Bill is done. So it's either you get the degree with that GI Bill or it's gone. That is one of the primary benefits of being military, is a GI Bill, and then there's VA housing. Those are the two things that everybody gets regardless of whether they retire or not. And right now this college is like, yeah, we took all your money, we took your time, we gave you a degree, so now the GI, the Veterans Administration that handles the GI Bill, as far as they're concerned, your account is closed. You can't use anything that you might have had left over towards, working on a degree now that we took your degree away. And I was like, dude, that is... The guy paid for the degree, he earned it, you took it away over what in court would account to nothing more than hearsay, and especially considering there's evidence to the contrary of the testimony. The evidence is much more reliable than the witness testimony in this case. Which is why it's going to court. But it's like, that college really dicked him over. And so, and it's a weird situation where even if the guy had gone through with what they're accusing him of doing, they're not allowed to revoke his degree like that. Like, I don't understand how the college is not being sued by other people. Like, you can't take away the degree that was paid for and earned due to extracurricular activities and that sort of thing. The guy, if he's guilty of this, would go to jail. It's not like he would go to jail and lose his degree. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why the college would be allowed to do that? In what is this something like? This is something I want to actually. I don't know if it's worth spending time and energy looking into, but have colleges revoked people's degrees in the past, where they gave you, like, oh, hey, you graduated, here's your diploma. Oh, no, never mind. Not really, we're taking it back because we don't like you as a person. Is that a thing? Because, I mean, Bill Cosby was a doctor. He still has his diploma and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Even though he was guilty of, multiple accounts of rape and is in jail.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thought I was asking a question. But a question would be, is this part of, what is it called, Title IX?
Yeah.
That they established their own kangaroo courts?
Yep.
And established within the college grounds. So, if he was still enrolled, like, I don't know if he had just gotten his degree, and this is kind of like after-party stuff, or they're just wrapping up the year, but his degree is pretty solidified. But if he's still a student, I could see why they could revoke a degree when it's not at the official end of the term. Now, if he previously got it in another semester, or say he
Yeah.
graduated a year or two later and it's found out he's some serial rapist, yeah, they can't really revoke it. That's outside of college, period. What I think is going on is due to Title IX, colleges are so worried about maintaining, I guess, being subsidized by
Mm-hmm.
government funds. They will just shut it down as fast as possible. And the first person who reports it, and especially if they are on the female side, just run with it because that's the safer bet and just end it as fast as possible.
Yeah, this is the weirdest thing because there are people who are currently in prison who are earning degrees. People who have been convicted of murder and rape. And
Correct.
they're like, oh, no, you can still get your degree. And you're like, those. What
You
kind of
can do
nonsense world where somebody's paid all this money for a degree, they've earned the appropriate grades in classes, and you handed them the diploma, and then you're like, oh, but your activities as a person that have nothing to do with whether or not you earn this degree, we're going to take it away. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. How that is.
the area where I could see it being potentially valuable or harmful, depending on the way you look at it, is if, again, if he's at kind of the end of the year and the degree is pretty much guaranteed, right? Exams are done or they're doing final testing, everything looks good. He's got his GPA up and the degree is pretty assumed, but still an enrolled student handing a degree to a potential rapist while active and attending, that's a bit different than saying there's a guy in jail who's now trying to clean up, fix his lifestyle, and basically rehabilitate. So giving yourself give a college giving a degree to a convict who is working so that way they can later on be an ex-convict. They're out of the system. Now they're moving forward on life, has better optics than say
Yeah,
this guy was accused of rape and we handed him a degree and now he's long gone. I can see why they're hesitant, but it is still
yeah.
a very unfair system, especially when there is evidence to the contrary and it's not a legitimate court. If they have earned a degree and it's not a legitimate expulsion based off of factual evidence, more just hearsay, that's wrong. That's very wrong. Doesn't matter if you're male or female. You don't just eject somebody based off of hearsay without having something to base it off of and say, I know you gave us all this money, but screw your degree. So in that regards, that's very wrong.
Yeah, and I understand the college is doing this for the optics and all that sort of thing, but
I mean,
this does not
right.
the kicking someone out of the university and all that sort of thing. That does sound like something within their power. The revoking of a degree, that does not seem like something because that seems like a breach of contract on their part.
Yeah,
That's
I'm just guess. I'm not sure exactly again how that aligns with the current case. So for
I mean, unless when you enroll in a college, you sign some piece of paper that says, "I will not sexually, assault anybody while I'm here," on the grounds that if I do, I can have my degree revoked. Unless you
but
that.
the issue would be, was he still an enrolled student when this happened?
Oh yeah, he
And
was
then he got
still
the
an
degree
enrolled
after
student.
initially reported, and then they judged. You know what? You're guilty. We're not listening to further evidence, and we're going to revoke your degree. Again, that falls in what I was discussing earlier. They shouldn't be able to do that unless it's substantiated.
Well,
But it does
I would say even if it is substantiated, though,
substantiated if you're
that's
committing a crime, because that's an actual crime.
yeah. But how does the crime have a bearing on the degree itself? That's like saying, "Oh, I was filling out paperwork to buy a home. I bought a home. I've got a home loan from the bank. I've got my signature on all these documents and I've got all this debt now to my name. And then on my way home, I, get involved. Like I get into a bar fight or something, or no, I guess maybe not. On my way home, I get into road rage and I end up shooting somebody. And now the bank is like, oh, this person who just bought a house through our bank is now on trial for murder, and he could get, oh, time to take away the. And like, in what world does that make sense? Where like a contract that is legally binding that has no bearing on whether you are a criminal or not, except if the contract is signed in a criminal way, like, identity theft or something along those lines.
Well, if there's a clause within the college where if you sign up and they do have the ability to suspend your degree or to suspend your enrollment due to illegal activity, but it wasn't found out till right when you were getting the degree at the end of, say, his term or semester, and they'll say, well, on the alleged reported date, you hadn't quite got your degree yet, and this is when suspension would have started. So that's when it should boil down to a case-by-case basis to determine what is an appropriate punishment or whether any punishment is warranted and what actually happened. But all in all, one side was entirely dismissed with evidence of which none of it was listened to, and on the other side, it was hearsay of which it sounds like personal contacts, those who may be called in for a witness, sound as if this is the norm. This is not the first time that this girl has acted in that manner, or potentially acted in that manner, I would say. Has the capacity to do or has done something of what the man was reported. If it's kind of assumed that's a good possibility because it's already happened in the past and he's got evidence and all of that was disregarded, that right there is a reason why this whole Title IX kangaroo court is garbage.
Yeah, it is a mockery of justice.
We've seen this with not even this case, but again, the girl thing, that dude's career was ruined for a while.
Yeah, and the most egregious case,
I don't know what his name was. He got kicked out because someone accused him. Those Duke lacrosse players, multiple ones.
But and then there was that one kid, I don't remember his name, but he was kicked out halfway through his degree. He could not get a job. He could not do anything. He felt so hopeless, he ended up committing suicide, and a year later, his mother also committed suicide. The woman who, accused him, it was proven that she made it up. She said, yeah, it was made up, it was not true. And it's like, nothing happened to her. Yeah. No downside to her.
And you're off scot-free. That's the dangerous part, is this is incentivizing those type of lies.
Yeah.
If there's at least punishment for false accusations, so you better make sure it is real, I think that's going to kind of stifle that a bit to where only, legitimate cases are brought forward. So let's say if this goes before a court and neither side could prove one side or the other, then it's not really a false accusation. It's just unproven. It may be acquitted, but you're not in punishment either because we can't prove either way. But if it's proven you're providing false accusations, there needs to be a punishment for that, recompense for attempted. We already have liability laws, and they're along the same veins of intentionally destroying somebody knowing it to be false.
Yeah, and so that kind of, I'm going to try to steer this into politics, which is our next topic, but when it came to Kavanaugh, everyone except for Blasey Ford has admitted that they lied. All the other people who came out and accused him have admitted on the record they made that up for political reasons. There was no truth behind it. They had to eventually confess because people were bringing up holes in their stories, things that didn't make sense, and they're just like, yeah, it was nonsense. It was not
for rational testimony. They would have been tried on perjury, and that's illegal.
So the only one who still claims that she's legitimate is Blasey Ford. And everybody else who could have corroborated with her says, no, that didn't happen. Everybody else who could have been on her side or could have proven, or they're all like, no, this never happened. You can't even name the house. Nobody remembers this party happening. No, people you would think that something like this, like maybe they wouldn't remember the incident per se, but they would remember seeing her coming down the stairs and leaving the party being worried. But her friend who was supposedly took her home or supposedly was there.
I remember meeting Kavanaugh and I don't remember a party like that ever.
So
by that at all.
Yeah, the other things that don't make sense about her story is, I can't fly, I'm afraid of flying, but she flies all the time for work. I am so afraid of other people. Yeah, I'm so this event so traumatized me. I had to install a second door on my house, and no, That's not a second door on her house so she can escape. It's a second door to provide a private entrance for renters. She actively has people entering her house on a regular basis. But no, this is such a traumatic event. And you're like, if it's such a traumatic event, you're afraid of other people. You don't actively invite them into your house. Like, oh, yeah, it's so many lies that are provable, and you're like, this person doesn't have a credible record. But she's sticking to that story that yeah, this happened, and everybody else is like, as far as we know, everybody who should have been on your side, your best friend. And here's the other thing: the lawyer at the time said that her motivations for coming out against Kavanaugh were purely for justice and because this traumatic thing happened to her. A month later, she's at some event saying, "Oh yeah, she was definitely like her political bias." She had a
on video stating that they need to have a liberal or Democrat majority, and that was the primary attempt.
Yeah, she was saying, yeah, like at the time when she's in front of cameras and all this, like, oh no, there's no political bias. There's no, and then later on, a month later, she's like, oh yeah, there's definitely a political bias. It's like, what?
So here's what we can do, and what should be done is maintain the status. What has always been part of the American judicial system is that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So you must prove guilt. In the same vein as, say, slander or liable, that must be proven in order to be withheld within court. And sometimes it can be because there's a direct attempt. There's definitely a reason that can be pointed out. And again, that would still have to be proven before that's considered slanderous or liable. You know, I think one's print and one's verbal or something like those along those lines. But you still have to prove something. When it comes to just simple hearsay, so even Christine Blasey Ford, I'm not going to trust anything she says. Yeah. I think I kind of view her as somebody that I can no longer trust their words. I'm not going to say anything else about the lady. Don't know that much, but what I've seen from the trials and the evidence presented, none of it seems accountable. None of it seems legit or logical or realistic, and none of it is backed by anything. So the case is just, it is where it is. Nothing was proven against Kavanaugh, and nothing was proven against her as this is intentionally slanderous or liable, even though it does seem the motive's there. But let's leave it at that. But if you can find an actual motivation or a trail, so in the previous instance, this dude had a recording. That's evidence. That's the person's voice stating their intentions very clearly according to the story. That's what we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, when this goes to trial, like, so if she was taking him to court, that would be exonerating evidence. And now it is evidence against her and the college. And that's why he's taking that to court. Hopefully the courts, see rationality and are like, oh yeah, this is... Hopefully they get a good judge and they're like, yeah, this is definitely a case where the college and Title IX...
This is the exact same thing that was happening with impeachment, is that it's all based off of assumptions. It's people attributing motivation to the president on whether it is just bad optics or on whether it is considered, kind of a treasonous or a potential illegal activity, as in bribery or manipulation.
Yeah. So here's
one perspective, and since you can't prove it, which is why we'll continue on with that topic, but it's that mentality. If you cannot prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you do not have the evidence there to prove it, we should not be convicting anybody just on a hunch or an assumption. We got to prove it. We don't want people on death row based off of a hunch. We want people with life in prison based off a hunch. We don't people kicked out of college or a president impeached off of a hunch.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah, so going on to impeachment, because that's what the high crimes and misdemeanor topic is. And as you were saying, so what the Democrats' official story is that this was bribery, and this was an attempt by the president to manipulate elections in his favor. That's their claim. But the actual articles of impeachment make no such claim. They don't even accuse him of a crime.
Correct.
And I don't know if you've been watching the Viva Fry and stuff like that, where he was talking originally, and I don't know if I repeated him or acknowledged or said anything to this regard, but I think I originally might have sided with him when I was saying, oh, apparently Congress can impeach the president without an actual crime. I don't remember if I said that or not because it's been a couple months, but now I am actively convinced, no, there has to be a crime. Impeachment requires a crime.
Well, this part, I think, is up to debate. It does say high crimes and misdemeanors. However, if both the House and the Senate, the House put forth article of impeachment and the Senate says, you know what, we find this impeachable, and the president needs to be removed.
Yeah.
At that point, I guess technically Congress has a decision, but it's supposed to be based off of the idea of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Yeah. So that was the original arguments presented, but I don't know if you listened to Robert Barnes or.
Oh, was he one of the scholars brought in as a testimony?
No. He was interviewed. So he's a lawyer, and currently he's a lawyer for the Kavanaugh kids, not Sandman, but the rest, but some of the others. He's been a lawyer for Alex Jones and a couple other people, but Viva Fry had him on his show, and they were discussing the situation, and Barnes brought up.
Okay. I've never watched full streams, but yeah.
So he released a 30-minute cut of all the highlights of it. But Robert Barnes laid out this great argument, and I agree with about 80% of it. So I'm going to just kind of go over the cliff notes. But one of the things he talked about is when they were drafting the Constitution and putting the impeachment in there, they one of the guys there said, oh, we should also include abuse of power. Or as I don't remember if he used the term abuse of power or something else, like something along those lines. And James Madison responded, no, we can't have that. That's too broad of a term. And if we make that a part of impeachment, the president will serve at the leisure of Congress.
Yes.
Which is, but that's not how our system was set up.
Not a balance of power.
No, that's not a balance of power.
At all.
That is Congress having more. That's what they have in England. And so when Barnes was talking about this, he's like, yeah, they have a parliamentary system. They have a prime minister. He's elected the same way as a president, right? There's a, or I guess maybe not the electoral college, but there is a vote for the prime minister. He's not appointed by Congress, by the parliament over in the UK. But the UK can issue a vote of no confidence in the prime minister and kick him out if they've got a majority to vote him out. The US, they saw that and said, we don't want that system here.
Yes.
So that right there was like, oh, this has to be something that is not whatever Congress says it is. It has to be something that the law says it is, and Congress upholds the law against the president.
Okay, so that's a perfect statement as to why that has to be so. So in the U.S. Constitution, the legislative branch, which is the one that is supposed to pass legislation, is Congress.
Yes.
They are the ones that decide the laws. The presidential or executive branch also has the ability to veto.
Yes.
But that veto can be overridden if it becomes a majority within Congress. This is what causes that balance, stating we have two different branches looking, and it's also what allows a president to do their job, even if Congress doesn't quite like their methods, without the president getting interrupted, because the president was never elected by Congress. They were elected by the people. Yeah. And Congress has no right overriding the will of the majority voters of the people, or the majority winner of the electoral college, the way our system was set up. Yeah. That's a legitimate president because they won the legitimate electoral votes. Congress cannot just kick them out for nothing. But if there is a proven crime, a high crime or misdemeanor, something that could be potentially treasonous, or definitely a criminal activity, then somebody has to be able to pursue that, of which that's what Congress is tasked for. But that is it.
Yeah, because what you talked about, so the balance of power. So the balance of power is the president is head of the executive. He's in charge of the Department of Defense and, the FBI, Homeland Security, and all that sort of thing. So imagine a scenario where the president is trying to get away with every crime possible. He's taking bribes. He's killing people. He's doing all these sorts of things. Okay, he's in charge of the police. He's in charge of the FBI. Who is going to do anything to stop a president like that? Well, that's where Congress is like, okay, you are breaking laws. We have not only the authority to step in this case, but we have the congressional almost an obligation. We have an obligation because we agreed to uphold the Constitution of the United States. We have an obligation to impeach you.
Correct.
So, now, what Barnes takes it, I think, a step too far, and actually Alan Dershowitz, who was arguing on behalf of the president, also kind of made this similar argument, is that it must be a high crime, and when he talked about it, that means things like treason or, treason and bribery are outright spelled in, or, outright written into it, and those are legal terms that have, like locked-in meanings. People are arguing about the high crimes and it's bribery, treason, or high crimes and misdemeanors.
But what would be a misdemeanor that is capable of providing an impeachment? Or
So Barnes and Dershowitz are of the opinion, or at least currently Dershowitz is of the opinion, that in order to be impeached, it has to be a high crime. It can't be something trivial like the president murdered a butler. That's not going to impact the country. The Congress can't impeach over something, even though that would be a felony. That wouldn't.
That I don't agree with.
Yeah, that's where I'm gonna kick back against their arguments.
Citizen, the president is the president, but in general, the law is the law.
Yeah. So what their argument was, and it's based on some of the arguments of the founding fathers when they're drafting the Constitution. And it also is based on arguments made in previous impeachment cases where they were talking about we cannot impeach people for simple matters. These have to be matters that impact the entire country. Like if the president, as Adam Schiff stupidly tried to argue that the president could sell Alaska, if that wouldn't be an act of treason. I'm like,
that's kind of a point where it's like, really? How is that even possible? You think the president can just be like, hey, Russia, want Alaska back? Give me some money. That's not even possible.
No, it has to be approved by Congress. That has to be approved by Congress. If the president just made that deal, that would actively be treason, which is deliberately spelled out in the Constitution.
Yeah, that statement is just ignorant. That guy, man. You know, Adam Schiff is the definition of a sleazeball lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
He's not an idiot. He's smart enough to know I'm just going to spit out some garbage and hopefully people just absorb it. He's that kind of lawyer.
Yeah.
It's the worst. Just a garbage person, man. That's...
So that was the argument made in defense of Bill Clinton was that while he did something illegal and Congress could technically impeach him over that, they should not, because there's not a necessarily high crime. It wasn't a crime that would impact everything. It wasn't going to cripple the nation. It wasn't going to impact future elections and things like that.
Well, here's what I was going to state about the Clinton impeachment.
Yeah.
He was brought into impeachment initially was for the sexual activity, of which there was a lot of testimony, but I don't think they ever fully decided is considered rape or just bad conduct within the White House. Yeah. What they did try to impeach him on is lying about the activities that they accused him of which I would, and I don't want to side with the Clintons ever, and I don't want to side with, people who do that kind of junk in the White House. Respect the place, but it's not illegal to, partake in whatever activities in the White House. You may consider an abuse of power, but it's the power dynamics versus, your administrative assistant and you. If it's not described as an illegal activity, then it's technically not illegal. But yeah, somebody's going to say, no, that didn't happen. That's going to be their initial response.
Yeah.
So impeaching somebody because they said that.
Well, here's the thing: is Bill Clinton could have pleaded the Fifth.
Yeah, he could have.
He could have said, "I'm not going to say anything that could possibly incriminate myself." Instead, he said, "I did not do it." That was an act of lie to Congress, and then it was like, "Oh no, you did." Yeah.
But that act of perjury was based solely on the accusations presented, and not trying to cover up, say, a covert op that was illegal or assassination of a world leader. Like a UN alliance, and we found out the president was issuing covert ops to wipe out alliance leader to insert his own power
Yeah.
or whatever. Just crazy stuff like that. They're lying about it. That's the worst of their worries.
Yeah.
Is perjury.
Yeah.
In this case, I can see why Clinton said it, and he shouldn't have lied. He should have just pleaded the fifth. But no matter what he said at that and what they were accusing him of, none of it had anything to do with conducting business in the White House or the continuation of who the voters elected into the office.
No.
And while I don't really like the guy, it would be safe to say let's go on the side of caution and just preserve a standard of just because you're a douche in the White House doesn't mean you're impeached until it's treasonous or until it is a crime that people would go to prison over.
Yeah.
You can prove it.
Yeah, so here's the thing with perjury, with the exception of the most recent cases of perjury, Flynn and Stone, most of the time it's a slap on the wrist and a fine. So at the look, I can kind of see the Clinton case as being an area where I can see arguments for and against it. So against the impeachment, and I actually think it would have been politically better for Republicans had they not proceeded with impeachment in that case.
Probably.
Yeah, politically it would have been much better. This was something they knew they couldn't win. And if he was found guilty, it's something that's kind of low on the totem pole of things that he has actually done as far as either criminal or
a perfect comparison between say Clinton's impeachment trial and Trump's isn't that, and neither side was anything actually dictated as a crime. It is just people putting assumption behind what was there and looking for any nitpicky detail that would say, well, that's a reason to impeach,
Yeah.
So, yeah, they could say during the Clinton trial it was supposed to be bipartisan, but it was fairly partisan. Same thing here with the Trump impeachment. Yeah, so, it's obvious.
Well, okay, partisan. Yeah. So there was an exception. With Clinton, it wasn't strictly down party lines. There were people who voted against party opinions.
Yeah, it was 100% partisan. Yeah. Agreed.
This time it was 100% in the House, 100% in the Senate.
Romney.
No, I'm saying people who voted to acquit, all Republican. Not one Democrat switched sides. And in the House, people who voted to impeach, not one Republican.
In the Senate, one Republican voted to
So one Republican voted to impeach or to to remove.
Follow through with
it. But the ones who the vote to win, right? So in the House, Democrats, the people who pushed it forward, all those votes were Democrats. There were Democrats and Republicans who voted either against or abstain. So all the ones who
I got you.
So there was one vote that was entirely one party. And that happened in both cases. With Clinton, that didn't happen. But so going back to Clinton. So the arguments so there's the political, that was politically damaging to the Republicans after that. The other thing is it's not a significantly high crime. It's not going to impact their respect of Clinton or anything like that. And it wasn't, but I'm of the opinion that it's kind of like 60-40 for me. Like 60% no, that's not something worth, and then 40% saying, well, there is the impact that has on the office of the president as far as that looks bad concerning other countries. What he did, not just the sexual impropriety, but then lying to his own Congress and then being held because there was an actual crime in that case, that hurts our relations with other countries. You're like, we're electing this leader who he's gonna lie to the American people and to the other members of our Congress, or I guess of our government body. That could have strained relations and led to more severe things. So I can see that, although that's I could see that argument being like, okay, there's something behind that, but that's not. I think the shouldn't have happened against Clinton is kind of more compelling to me now. Granted, if you had asked me this question like 10 years ago, I'm like, no, Clinton was impeached, he was disbarred. So I will say that impeachment process did lead to him paying fines and him being disbarred after he was removed from presidency. Because that's the thing, is if he was still president and they went through with the charges, they could have disbarred him as president, but the whole perjury thing, he can just pardon himself. And this is where I'm not getting the argument from Dershowitz and Barnes, because Barnes actively said, yes, the president could kill somebody, and that's not an impeachable offense. And I was thinking, but if the president murders somebody and he has the power to pardon himself, the only exception to pardoning himself is impeachment. That means he can do everything except for bribery, everything except for treason, everything except for what Barnes would consider a high crime or misdemeanor that would, that would either something that would make an election impossible, something that would cause us to go to war, something that would cause, and I'm just thinking, there is a huge group of criminal offenses in between lying to Congress and I'm the reason the United States collapsed. There's a huge range of crimes there, and I'm like, how else are we supposed to hold a president accountable if not through the impeachment process?
Well, that was the thought I was having a little earlier in the discussion, is if you focus on the high...
Oh, you muted yourself.
Sorry, I accidentally hit a key on my keyboard. My hands around. But high crimes kind of has this semblance or understanding of, treason, of selling out your country, selling national secrets, of betraying the American public and trust by doing an illegal activity. Not just an illegal activity within America, but it's a high crime because you have violated the understanding, the respect, and laws of the country. Misdemeanor.
So that's
in that context.
Yeah, so that's the part that a lot of people who are arguing in favor of impeachment are misrepresenting, because that's something that Dershowitz and some of the other lawyers brought up. Is like, at the time the Constitution was written, there was no such thing as a felony. There was no felony misdemeanor, right? Like, currently, it's kind of general knowledge. If it's a misdemeanor, okay, that's kind of a lesser crime. That's like petty theft. But if it's a felony, that's something like grand theft auto, murder, rape. Those are the more extreme crimes.
Correct.
At the time the Constitution was written, a murder was a misdemeanor, and even in the United States, drunk driving is a misdemeanor. And
so it would seem a misdemeanor is a crime between you and an individual, whereas a high crime is against the country. Is how that's I think is a more correct interpretation of what it should be. It's illegal because we have a law. It's on the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are misdemeanors about, if you have a certain amount or number of ounces of weed in certain states. It's still a misdemeanor because it's still a law in that state. Other states may not have it, but this state does, and so it's a misdemeanor in one and not the other. It just simply means there's a law on the books saying you can't do that.
Yeah, and when it comes to the president, it should be federal laws only. Like, if it's illegal in California and the president happens to be in California, and like, okay, so let's say he goes to New York and buys a 24-ounce soda, impeach the MFer. No, that's... So, well, yeah. So Congress doesn't have the ability to enforce or dictate laws in states. They do have federal level. So the president should be held to federal laws only. I just want to...
I do kind of agree with. In the Clinton impeachment thing, though, Monica Lewinsky is kind of one of the big points. There are no laws stating the president can't do that with administrative assistance.
Yeah. So what started the impeachment was
being a married man. That's definitely bad optics. Not something the president should be doing, but it's not illegal anywhere.
Yeah. So what started the whole impeachment process off of that did not reach the bar that I would think would be required to start an impeachment hearing.
So I have the impression if Congress wants a stricter regulation on how the executive branch needs to operate, legislation must be passed dictating that it is now law.
Yes.
And therefore, both parties, both Republicans and Democrats, are going to have a vote, and have a majority vote, meaning it can't just be one side or the other. You're going to have a decent enough vote to make it a law. Once in law and then violated, then by all means proceed with impeachment, and now it's illegal.
Yeah. So with the one exception to that is the situation with Jackson, who was the first president to be impeached. Congress passed a law specifically to impeach him.
But yeah,
he was planning on firing a member of, I don't know if it was his cabinet or somewhere in his administration that he had the executive authority to fire, and Congress passed a law saying, oh, we're going to make it illegal for you to fire him, and if you do, then we're going to impeach you for it. And it was like, wait, that can't be the situation. That seems like something that
well, see, that shouldn't have happened, but if it's a bipartisan decision, that would mean both parties, somebody from at least the opposing or minority party had to have agreed. I don't think we've ever got to a point where the House is overwhelmingly Democrat, as in, over 2/3, and same thing with the Senate. So if one political party got over 2/3 on both chambers of Congress, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Sounds great to one political party. I don't ever want to be there.
Yeah. And that ended up being a very close vote against impeaching Andrew Jackson, which is surprising now after hearing the full history of it from Viva Frei and these other people. Dershowitz mentioned it, and so there's a lot of people talking about that But one thing that was kind of upsetting to me, or maybe upsetting is not the right word, but seems like a severe flaw in our legal system is Dershowitz and the lawyers for Trump, all of them talked about precedent of impeachment, and even Barnes brought this up as well. But so did the people who are in favor of impeachment. And you're muted if you were trying to say something. The people
continue.
Yeah, so people like was it Schumer and Nadler or whatever, who are arguing in favor of impeachment, also cited precedent. And I'm just like, that to me is a problem. Because if you're saying, okay, let's look at the first case of impeachment in the United States, and that'll be how we interpret this high crimes and misdemeanors, I'm like, what if the first instance of when this came to when this became something that had to be agreed upon, what if they got it wrong the first time? That means every incident after that, they're going back to that first instance, and they're all going to get it wrong. And to me, that spells, if you miss the target even once along this chain, your aim is going to be off. Like, it's like if you're holding a gun at a target, every little deviation away from the target, your bullet's going to go further and further away.
So you are correct.
So that seems like a problem.
About a larger political issue that has ripped the country basically in half. That's Roe versus Wade, because it is precedent.
Yeah, and now people cite that to enact other laws.
Correct. So if we are strictly adherent to only precedent, where that is no longer something that can be violated, as in basically, if a judge considers this to be the ruling of a case, that is now the first precedent, they have basically enacted a law.
Yeah,
because now all further judicial decisions have to follow through with said precedent. I get the idea of precedent, especially if you're trying to adhere to a strict, code of conduct such as the Constitution. Precedent should be stick with the Constitution, not with societal changes. That would be a good precedent, because that's what it's supposed to be. We have a written documentation on what encompasses political power on the 3 separate branches and what they're supposed to be doing. That's precedent.
Yeah. So this seems like a
information then, so a decision was made, and now 30 years later we can get more information, more evidence, we have more scientific technology to point in an opposite direction, but due to precedents we're stuck. That I have a problem with. That's one of the big issues with Roe versus Wade is I'm pretty sure if we could present the medical history, technology, what could be construed as life or the start of life or whatever, Roe versus Wade would have 180.
And so the thing this seems like an unforeseen flaw with the Constitution of the U.S. because I have not seen. So when the House voted to let me so when the House voted to impeach, they pass it on to the Senate. The Senate has to deal with that issue. They can't do anything else until the impeachment process is handled. The Supreme Court does not have any authority over the executive or Congress in the same manner. And I was thinking, if something gets to the Supreme Court and they look at the laws that are on the books and the laws are not sufficient to deal with the case they're doing, what they currently do, which led to Roe v. Wade, is they interpret the law and that becomes a new precedent. When that occurs, what should happen is the Supreme Court should be, okay, the laws on the books do not cover this. They are unclear or ambiguous. The wording is old. We haven't passed it to Congress, and then Congress has to clarify or rewrite that to go with the current case. And so the Supreme Court would pause the court, pass it to Congress. Congress has to deal with this. This is their top priority. They can't deal with anything else. They look at the law and be like, oh, okay, this is, at the time this was written, it probably wasn't ambiguous, but as time has increased, this becomes ambiguous in matters to this particular case. We need to define the law so it is clear and discernible as to which side these events fall, whether they are criminal or whether they're not criminal. Then that gets passed, and then the Supreme Court's like, okay, now we have a law to deal with to make a judgment.
And what they would also allow for is law based off of decisions of the Supreme Court stating, hey, this is what was decided. Legislation needs to be decided on how to handle the outcome of our decision and how to make it legal and fair. Later on, as more information comes out about whatever, as forensics becomes more scientific and tuned, and we can get better forensic evidence or better medical understanding or just a better civil understanding, those can go back to the Supreme Court to say, these laws were off of these cases, but now they don't seem to apply. This is an appeal to the Supreme Court to re-examine and determine, does this still apply?
Yeah.
It's an ever-shifting but more tightly maintained governance. It makes it more accountable.
Yeah. And right now, with the way the system is, the Supreme Court has an unchecked power in that they can make a decision in a court case that is effectively enacting a law that may or may not have an actual legal grounds in the Constitution itself. And the executive can't stop that, and the Congress cannot stop that.
Well, then
it becomes, people have started to claim the Supreme Court's responsibility is to interpret the law. That was never one of their responsibilities. Their responsibility was to determine if a current case was against the law or wasn't. They're supposed to look. Yeah, that's their job and their role. When you also add to that their ability to interpret the law, that's a huge problem.
And if it's not on the books, then Congress needs to vote on what happens after that. They need to have the legislation passed to either fulfill what they viewed as would encompass the law, or, hey, you know what, it doesn't matter, and we're not going to pass this in the law, and therefore, whatever case went to the Supreme Court is now kind of null and void. We don't have a law covering it.
So it's likely a verdict of not guilty, or
pretty much. They're kind of acquitted because we can't pass a law that encompasses this adequately.
Yeah.
It would be a more proper understanding of checks and balances, of strictly judicial. And you are 100% correct, because Congress has already done that, not just with Roe versus Wade, but multiple decisions that we are now just stuck with because of precedent.
So two major ones.
It's not. It's just simply a decision.
Yeah, so there's Roe v. Wade, and then there's Doe v. Banks?
Oh, yeah. No.
What was the other one? Starts with a B, right?
I'll have to go
They happened within several months of each other.
There was two cases related, at least, just to the pro-life, pro-choice debate.
And then the other case is gay marriage in the United States was also decided by Supreme Court.
Roe versus Bolton? That's not right.
I think it might be Bolton.
Roe versus Bolton, 1973. Abortion law.
Yeah.
In Georgia.
Yeah,
that's immediate.
Yeah, that's the other case that. So Roe v. Wade was the first, but then within a month or two, that kind of solidified its abortion, and they, I don't know if they necessarily referred to the verdict of Roe v. Wade and making the decision of that next one, but you said it was Doe v. Bolton, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so abortion was made a legal, or I shouldn't say right, because that's the incorrect use of that word, a legal privilege in the United States based on that Supreme Court decision. And also, gay marriage as a legal privilege was a Supreme Court decision. There is no legislation on that in Congress, and yet is the law of the land because of the Supreme Court. That is a very dangerous power for the Supreme Court to have, because none of the other two branches can do anything to stop that.
Yeah, at all. Because if either of those two try to stop it, it then goes right back to the Supreme Court to decide, does this follow precedent as well as the Constitution? So the only thing blocking anything further than their own precedent is if the Constitution explicitly denies it.
And here's the other thing about Supreme Court decisions. They can use, there is nothing holding them to use precedent, which is actually goes into the Roe v. Wade decision, because actually precedent would have caused them to vote in favor of Wade against Jane Roe, saying, no, you don't have that right. You can't make this legal. You don't have a right to an abortion, or you don't have a privilege to an abortion. You can't sue the state in hoping to get that. Because the legal precedent prior to Roe v. Wade was all in favor of, no, states get to determine how, or who they, or what their rules are concerning abortion. They kept referring to it as states' rights, state rights, until you get to Roe v. Wade, and then we can actually, even though precedent would have us rule one way, we're going to change it, and we're going to go the other way. Because so the Supreme Court making decisions is not just based on previous Supreme Court decisions, it's based on all decisions from all the circuits. So until that point, everything was against Roe. And at the final hour when it got to the Supreme Court, they're like, even though everything else has been going against it, we're going to swing it this way. So let's go, rolling this back into impeachment. The rules on what determined whether a high crime or misdemeanor, and the rules of who gets to determine that, was also a precedent from the Supreme Court. Because when this was brought to them during a previous impeachment, the Supreme Court responded back, that's up for the House of Representatives to determine. And I was listening to Robert Barnes say that, and I'm like, that is ludicrous, because if this ever went back to, he was citing that as, the Supreme Court said that, and that means, it wasn't Robert Barnes who said that, sorry, I should clarify. He wasn't saying that. It was other guests that Viva Frei had on, so he did a live stream with two other lawyers, and they're both arguing, when this came to the Supreme Court says the House gets to determine whether an action is a high crime or misdemeanor. And I'm like, but that was the Supreme Court at the time. If this went back to the Supreme Court, they could rule the other way and be like, no, we determine what is a high crime and misdemeanor, and this lying, calling someone a horse face on Twitter is now a high crime and misdemeanor, according to the Supreme Court. They could make that determination.
Now, what if you called them dog face?
All right. So that is, so if you call them I should have done that instead of the horse face. You're right. If you call someone a lying dog face pony soldier, that the Supreme Court,
like 2 feet from them,
the Supreme Court could determine that is a high crime and misdemeanor according to the Constitution, and now that is a high crime and misdemeanor according to the Constitution, because the Supreme Court mandated, and they get to interpret what the Constitution means.
Okay. Here's a theory, just keep it on the same topic. I just went to go look that up, what is precedence? Is that constitutional? Technically, it's not constitutional.
No, it is not.
It is a defined doctrine within judicial systems that they go off something, a Latin term called stare decisis. I'm not sure if I pronounced that quite right, but
sounds close enough.
It looks like it is a doctrine that basically states in similar circumstances, once this decision has been made, that other judges will follow suit in order to establish a more common law system. Is basically to establish commonality between like cases. However, it is an intellectual and ideological understanding. In order to build towards common law, we actually don't have anything in law stating this must be taken into account. It is simply an opinionated belief. We already have precedent. I'm going to follow precedent in order to keep common guidelines or standards.
Yeah.
However, that the longer it continues, it makes it harder to judge cases when there used to be a common standard versus having more understanding of a case later on just due to scientific, technological, progress or societal changes. Therefore, it's kind of just up to the judge on whether they're going to follow precedent, because we've already seen people break precedent, even in the United States. And it made sense on the case-to-case basis on what their decision was, saying, you know what, I understand it was made here, and understand you as a lawyer brought up precedent and why I should agree with it. This is a different case. This doesn't quite follow there. So I'm almost wondering if we kind of have this ideological standard. There still must be a checks and balances versus ideology. If thing is to be considered precedent, then it must also be established that every detail within the case follows the majority of what was decided on in precedent of the future case.
All right. And
if we find another case doesn't quite fall in line, they only have some similarities, then precedents could be neglected and stated, you know what, because they don't meet minimum requirements of being this much in equality, I'm going to make my own simple judgment. Precedent no longer must be followed.
And that also plays into the mandatory minimums. So when somebody is guilty of a crime and they technically violated the law, a judge could be like, well, they technically broke this law, but they're not as bad. Like, so somebody, like, say somebody is involved in in gangs and they're dealing drugs, and like, yeah, they're technically guilty of dealing drugs, but they only made one sale and it's a very small amount. Meanwhile, there are drug cartels that are dealing in kilos of the stuff, and they both get the same sentence. The judge, because of mandatory minimums and this idea of precedent, is like, my hands are tied. I have to give this kid who's the first time selling drugs the same sentence as somebody who's, a massive kingpin of a cartel.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that is, so there's, if you,
life-changing circumstances. We've seen this in our own judicial courts is, you got an 18-year-old kid join into a gang. They're conned into selling drugs. Mm-hmm. They get caught. They're persecuted, and they're saying, you know what, you're going to have 25 to life. But I know you're 18 and you're an idiot. 6 months, you're incarcerated. Get out and please don't do that again. If I see you here, you're in for life.
That's what judges should be doing.
Fair judgment, just because, kids do stupid things, especially at that age. They're going to be easily.
Yeah, so that is a fair judgment. And so, when I was in court in Nevada, Joel was in the same court listening to the same judge making the same rulings, and I'm like, dude, this guy, I cannot, because he was throwing the book at everybody that came across his bench, and I was like, are you serious? I get that maybe he's kind of sounded like he's got a stick up his butt about the law, but it's like, every time where he could have been like, okay, granted, there were some people that went up to him like, yeah, this guy's belligerent. This guy definitely, he's kind of a career criminal, kind of. He's not getting the message. Okay, I can understand giving him a harsher sentence and putting him back. I mean, there's a couple of people that broke their parole and things along those lines. Like, okay, those. But there were other people that were up there for the first time. They're like, I don't even know what law I broke, sort of thing. And this was my opinion of my own case. I was like, This is something that is so petty and stupid. While I'm technically in violation of the law, you shouldn't be holding, like... So, let me explain the story. I was living in Nevada. I was living in the same apartment. Well, I guess we were renting rooms from one of my brother's buddies. I got into a fight, like a verbal fight with my younger brother. He came into my room. He wouldn't leave. He refused to do anything. Like, he was refusing to respect my boundaries of my room. I got angry and frustrated with him. I threw a punch, and he kind of basically laughed it off. And then later on, because I had disappeared, I'd fallen off the radar, and he and his girlfriend at the time, who is now his wife, were kind of worried. They called the police, 24 hours later as kind of a missing persons thing, and as a part of that, they reported the incident to the cops, and that was technically battery. And I got the maximum. Well, I shouldn't say the maximum sentence because I guess technically they could have charged me a fine and also sent me to 6 months in prison. But instead, they just charged me the maximum financial penalty, which at the time was 3 months worth of income. Which to me, I was like, dude, for that. And there was. But the judge, every time he got to a situation where he's like, yeah, he could have enforced something a little more lenient. It was like he heard the facts of the situation. I had my younger brother willing to testify on my behalf, and they would not let him in the courtroom. My defense lawyer would not let him testify on my behalf, and the judge had already made his decision before he even met me. And I was like,
yeah, I mean that's families have altercations. No, people shouldn't be hitting each other.
Yeah,
obviously not a good thing, but just because this was reported and the judge says, "Hey, I've heard about it," if they can listen to both sides, and it's it's kind of family squabble, and both people are saying, you know what, this was never intended to be that way. I'm not taking this.
Sorry for wasting your time. This is yeah.
But yeah, if a judge is just simply going to stick by it based off of precedent and arbitrarily offer something like that, instead of stating, well, you have no previous record of anything, and it was your brother reporting something else entirely, this just came about, yeah, I'm going to give you maximum fine.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, he was there at the courthouse willing to testify on my behalf, saying, hey, don't do this to him. That's not, he doesn't deserve this. And they would not let him in.
Yeah, because that wasn't the intent. They weren't trying to get you in trouble for having, just a brotherly altercation. They were just worried about, where you went to. It just kind of turned into a situation. At this point, things are wrapped up. You have family businesses. Yeah, we're all good to go. But just because the judge had this idea of precedent and was not willing to budge, even if it was just an interfamilial, two brothers having a squabble, and saying, hey, neither of you have a record. Just don't do that again. I see you in my court again. I'm going to have some fines. You're going to have something. Don't bring that up again. That's plenty to get most people off of anything and say,
yeah,
never hear from
that would be like, whew, that could have gone a lot worse. But instead, it's one of those things like, yeah, that judge was an a-hole. Because he was acting as if he was just a robot stamping things as they go through.
Correct.
And I'm
why
like,
judge? What are you judging? Yeah. All you're doing is reading what everybody else has judged. He could be replaced by a robot just looking for precedents on Google.
Yeah.
He's not judging anything. He's not looking at the circumstance at hand and saying, typically this would be the punishment. But I can tell by your actions, I can tell by both sides within the court, from the prosecution and the defendant, none of this is what was expected from either side. It just came about because of bad circumstance. So, yeah, you're going to have some kind of punishment. Fine. We have to have, you don't just hop into court.
Yeah, I could expect to, like, okay, you've been in court, you used up an hour of time, you have to pay an hour of a court fee, which I would assume would be like maybe $100, maybe $150, something like that.
Pay your court fees, or even like 5-10 hours community service,
something along those lines. But instead, it was almost $1,000, and I'm like, for that, and I'm like,
yeah,
are you kidding me?
So I completely agree with you. That is one area, precedence, that I believe the only reason it still stands suit is because it is so easily taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. Previous court cases of where there was ignorance that led to a precedent statement, now can be pulled upon almost basically as if of law, of which nothing is legislated, and it should not be a decisive term. It's just supposed to be an example. But because someone else had a precedent, you want to follow suit and say, for commonality, I'm just going to decide the exact same thing. That's not a judge. That's basically
that's a court clerk
saying I don't want to be ousted from my judge seat.
Yeah, that is no different from a clerk signing off on speeding tickets.
Yeah. Speeding tickets have a, you pay this much, you're going this rate, or you got a parking violation, or your mufflers are too loud, or whatever. Just your general civic violations, they all have a set dollar amount. Pretty much every county in every state in the United States has a list of just these basic violations, and you pay a set dollar amount. That's it.
Yeah, and you don't see a judge for those. You just see the clerk, and they stamp and charge you the fee.
That's all a judge is going to do, is just look and say, well, this is our list of what could potentially be there, and you're going to have this sentence. Why is that judge there? That's not a judge. They're not looking at the case. So I agree with you. Yeah, that's one area where the Supreme Court, that's being taken for granted, not necessarily by the Supreme Court, but by everybody else that abides within that context, by judicial hearings, judicial understandings of cases. They're just accepting it because either one, they don't want to be ousted as someone that has controversial viewpoints and stating I'm judging based off of what is in this context, or two, they don't understand enough that there's subtleties and nuance within every human interaction. That's what a judge is supposed to do. Precedence is there for the really odd circumstance where you're not sure quite how to sentence or what to do, but you find, hey, either a guilty verdict or non-guilty verdict, and you're like, well, in this precedent, they went to prison for 6 years, so maybe that's an adequate sentence. It's when you get to the undecisive moment, but a judge is supposed to be deciding.
Yeah, so
they're not robots, they're people. That's why they're elected to that position. We're paying them to be a judge, not a robot.
Yeah, and as you were talking, something occurred to me, or something that triggered something in my mind. So King Solomon's wisdom is most famously told in a story where two women came to him as a judge, because he was king at the time. That's what kings usually, what their rule or what their duties were. So these two women are fighting over a child, and they bring it before King Solomon, and they're both saying, "This is my child." The other woman says, "This is my child," and he says, "Cut the baby in half." And the woman said, "No, don't do that." And he's like, "Yeah, you're the mother." Now imagine if the king before him, King David, had a similar case and was like, this lady's got bigger boobs. All right, we're going to go with the bigger boob lady. And then King Solomon gets that same, and he's like, instead of saying cut the baby in half, he's like, oh, which of you has bigger boobs? That's the precedent. Sorry, my dad said it. What? I was like, that is one of the stories that people who don't even read the Bible know that story about King Solomon, because it shows, okay, that was excellent wisdom and proper judgment.
Well, not only
encapsulates that. Now imagine if he's like, I'm not going to use either. I'm just going to go with what the guy before me said, because I'm pretty sure this is not an isolated incident.
I would say it doesn't only depict what you stated, but it also depicts what he declared as a verdict was simply a test to gather further information. It wasn't him declaring, because I said so when I'm a judge and no one goes against the judge, I don't care which woman claims this child should be remain whole or go ahead and cut it in half. That will be the ultimate prosecution. I mean, ultimately, that would mean two women squabbling and a kid gets cut in half.
And that becomes the law of the land. Like, oh, don't squabble over a kid again, because they're just going to cut it in half.
The only reason that he stated that is to find out, a woman would rather her son stay intact and go live with someone else than to perish.
Yeah, and that's also a pretty bizarre contradiction to the Roe v. Wade in the U.S.
I mean, it is a bit extreme. There is historical context for that. It's in the Bible. That story's been around for thousands of years.
Well, it's like just saying the mother would rather have the child stay alive and with someone else rather than...
Correct. But that is a judgment. That's not, hey, you're taking a CAT test or a SAT or ACT, fill in the bubbles, and the closer you are to one decision or the other, that's where you fall because of precedent.
Yeah.
That's not judgment. That you're filling out answers, and a robot just says, well, you're more likely here, and so you get the same judgment as someone who's not quite in the same boat as you, but close enough.
So you mentioned this earlier, but I'll go back to it, because I do have the clip queued up. And there's a little more to this, so I don't know. Did I send you the links? I don't think I sent you the links on this.
Let me see here. I'm not seeing them in chat.
Yeah, I didn't send the links in chat. I forgot. So yeah, this is the Biden thing. This clip is awesome. So there's a little bit more to it here because this is kind of funny. So this is the lady asking the question.
The candidate with the greatest advantage in this race. You've been the vice president. You weren't burdened down by the impeachment trials. So
okay, yeah, she says you weren't burdened down by the impeachment trials, and a bunch of people in the audience turned to her like, "Are you what?" and then you can hear somebody laughing, and she's like, "Oh, well, in the participation." Dude, I'm like, oh, I didn't hear anybody else talking about that part. That's pretty good. She accidentally brought attention to the fact that Joe Biden is the primary reason for the impeachment trial.
So it is hilarious, but on the other hand, that also means she wasn't intending anything ill towards Joe. She's just saying, yeah, stuff was brought up, but you're not in the Senate. You're not tied down by this.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
the Senate passed within a week. You've been able to continue on your campaign, and there has really been no burden other than just speculation. Yeah. And she's not just attacking him. She's kind of stating you're kind of the front runner in the DNC, is from what I could perceive. But I'm seeing a little failing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he just took that the wrong way.
Yeah, and so here's the rest of it.
Performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
Yeah, seems like a genuinely good question and all that.
You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you gotta be honest.
Yeah, that's where he says you're a lying dog-faced pony soldier, and it's like, how is that? So he says, have you ever been to a caucus? And he's like, no, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. I'm like,
that's the instant when somebody should have just said, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like well, how do you know this person has never been to a caucus? How can you state that emphatically?
Okay, so I'm not sure what pony soldier means.
Dog-faced, okay.
Dog-faced, that's just a straight-up insult.
Yeah.
I don't know what other context you could take that in,
but lying.
I don't know what a pony soldier is.
So yeah, the fact he runs them all three together, lying. So he's accusing somebody who's at his town hall and is assumably someone who is trying to find a reason to support him, and he's like, "No, you're a lying dog-faced pony soldier." I don't know. You can't see his face in these clips. I was trying to see if he was laughing or because some of the other people are kind of like, "Ha ha." But it's hard to tell if he was kind of making that as like a ha ha ha. That's just a silly insult, like calling somebody,
Okay.
You are you're the son of a what's the Monty Python quote? Your father smelled of elderberries, but I don't remember the. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberries. It's hard to tell if he was saying an absurd insult like that. Because some of the other people do kind of crack a smile, but it's hard to tell if he was making a serious face. But he did say she was lying. That's the part that, like, the rest of it is just kind of silly and draws attention to this. But accusing someone of lying about you when they're asking what seems like a sincere question is, I don't understand that at all. That seems like that should be like, well, his campaign's toast now.
I would say from your standard, just average person viewpoint. When he said you're lying, I think most people know exactly what he meant by that. I don't agree with it. I think you're making something up. A lie. I don't think there's really anybody throwing their hands up and say, well, let's question what he meant by when he said that she was lying. And dog face. Again, I don't think that's something where people are questioning what he meant by that, as in that is just an insult. That's
just flat out insult.
That's not something. I don't even know what kind of insult that is. Maybe it's like an older person.
Supposedly, they said that this was attributed to. He's making a reference to a John Wayne movie. Although
Soldier is the only point where I could see that actually having any validity. Yeah. And if you watched Michael Knowles' early stream, he went to go research it and said that does not exist in any John Wayne movie ever. There is another Western where somebody mentioned a pony soldier, and they had some other line of text basically saying you're same as a snake oil salesman. You are a liar. That's the only context you can find in like Western movies related to a pony soldier. So he said he's guessing Biden saw that a long time ago and it's stuck in his head, and that it just basically meant you're lying. But, so even if we could translate pony soldier to just simply you're a snake oil salesman or liar, he said you're a lying dog-faced liar to this lady that asked him just a legitimate question and like.
Well, that's the funny thing. Like, so he asked her if she's ever been to a caucus, and that's what he's saying she's lying about. I can understand. It's like, oh, have you ever run your own business? And she's like, well, yes, I have. And I'm like, that's a little. But have you ever been to Walmart? Have you ever been to a baseball game? Oh, you're a liar. It's like, a caucus? There's.
Ever started a small business? Yes, I have. Bullshit.
I was like, people volunteer to show up at a caucus. It's not like that's impossible that somebody would have done this thing. It's like, no, it's not something I personally have done, but if you're somebody who goes to a town hall, it's kind of like, well, this is somebody who's politically active. It's possible they went to a caucus.
I would say it's very possible. She's at his rally.
Have you ever been to
would take their time to go talk to a potential DNC elect?
Yeah,
I mean, he's concerned with this stuff. That's more credence to her possibly wanting to see how a caucus works than most of America.
Yeah. Have you ever been to a Jewish synagogue? You lying dog-faced pony soldier. No, you haven't. What? Well, if you're somebody who's interested in religion, you probably have. But
every politician I voted for, I haven't gone to one single rally. I haven't gone to one single, public statement or anything out there. I get most of my news just from the internet. The people in that room are there because they believe they have some legitimate questions and you want to be there. Yeah. Those are the activists.
Yeah, and so you can see this is a bit of a pattern with Joe. Right? Because he kind of did the same thing with that other guy who was asking him questions about his son, and he challenged the guy to a push-up contest and all that.
Is that where he called him in like an old fat?
Yeah. Yeah. Listen to me, fat. I mean,
yeah, that.
I challenge you to a push-up. I bet I could do more push-ups than you.
It's like, okay, if I beat you in push-ups, can I be president?
Because he was asking him a question about the Hunter situation, and he was, he seemed to be a Democrat who was in favor of Warren. And this guy, he's just so anytime anybody brings up the Burisma or Hunter and all that sort of thing, Joe kind of goes off the rails and starts just attacking these people.
Yes, he is just as thin-skinned as Trump, and if you say anything talking about his election potential, his vice presidency, or his family, he'll just shoot you down. And he does it in like an old man way because those are the terms he knows. If he was like 40 years younger, he would have probably said, you know what, F you, bitch.
Yeah.
And it would have just slipped out. Joe, he's as thin-skinned as Trump. Yeah. Just like pretty much every other politician out there. You go attack their personal beliefs, their current presidential run or nomination, they take it as an insult. And they'll just lash back instantly. And, oops, let me ring that in.
And I would say Trump, I can kind of see a little bit more in defense of his actions, because most of the time he's being accused of somebody or being attacked for something. It's not something he's actually done, or like, oh, hey, you're a racist. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a racist. All right.
Like when he made that bitch statement, it's because they were asking specifically about what's her name, Stormy something or another, making a comment about him, about the situation. And so then he said, well, she's a horse face, whatever. I don't think he just said it, but they asked him specifically about that. In this question, she didn't ask about his family. She wasn't asking about Hunter. She was simply stating, you seem the most viable, but it looked like you didn't do so well in Iowa. So what's your plans going forward?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the summation of her question. Mm-hmm. Nothing insulting, nothing derogatory. That's an odd response, is you just call them a horse face. And I would say that's almost a bit worse than Trump, as in Trump had personal encounters with the person he was charged of having this disagreement with. So, it's kind of like two bitter exes yakking at each other, I could see more of him calling them horse face than Biden calling a random person asking a question in a presidential, get together, a horse face.
All right.
Either way, I don't think it's appropriate, but it is silly in that Trump
it's a silly insult, and I'm gonna start using that for people.
Biden calls someone a dog face.
Yeah, I'm gonna start using that though as a silly Monty Python-esque insult. Yeah. Oh, you're such a lying dog-faced pony soldier, man. go on Call of Duty or Halo.
See this?
Man, everybody on this team is a lying dog-faced pony soldier. I just can't get some good teammates.
You're gonna go full Monty, just be like, what? I don't know where that question's going, but I fart in your general direction.
All right, and so he did mention the Iowa caucus, and I just sent you the link to that.
I had to listen to that 5 or 6 times before I realized he said I was in an Iowa caucus. It sounded like he said I am an Iowa caucus. Like the first couple times I heard it, I'm like, what is he saying?
Yeah, so I sent
you a caucus. So that was my bad, but that's just what it originally sounded like. And I heard one reporter talking about that, and they asked the question like, did he just ask if he was a caucus? Caucus? What does that mean? Because he blurted like just. Oh, go ahead.
So I sent you a link. It starts at 2 minutes and 9 seconds. I don't think I sent the timer on that link, but I've got some exclusive footage of the Iowa caucus, which all right, just making sure it actually shows up in the. So here we go.
1, 2, 5. Lisa, 3.
Okay. All right. One, 5, 3, that's what happened at the. That's what I think happened at the Iowa caucus.
Okay, so I have a question for you. During the Iowa caucus, I heard there was multiple coin tosses that had to be decided because it mostly came down between Bernie and Buttigieg as far as who would get that district.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw this one coin toss where this young man, kind of in a blazer, he flips it up, he catches it, and the typical way of a coin toss is either you flip it up and you let it drop to the floor so nobody touches it, or you flip it up if it's just kind of a friendly coin toss, you grab it, flip it onto the back of your hand.
Yeah.
I don't know any other way of doing a coin toss other than those two. Even in NFL, the referee flips it up, lets it drop, nobody touches it.
Yeah.
Whatever is heads is heads, whatever tails is tails. This dude grabs it, starts to unravel one finger at a time, looks at it and say it's heads, and then you see him roll it in his hand and then eventually reveal heads. I'm just like, what the? And he's like, well, Buttigieg. Did you see that video? I saw it on Reddit.
No, I did not see that video. That sounds amazing, but that's.
I tried to look it up on YouTube, but I don't think that particular video clip is there. But yeah, he flipped it up.
Okay.
Grabbed it like this, started unraveling his fingers, looked at it and said heads. As he's opening his fingers, and you can see his fingers grab it again, roll it, flip it up. And everyone's like, oh, yep, it's heads. And they'll start clapping. He's like, oh, that's Buttigieg. So it's not obviously from a previous caucus. It's got to be the current Iowa caucus, not an old video. What?
So there's a lot of things that are going on that are fishy with the Iowa caucus. And what I think it is DNC has decided Joe's torpedoed. They pulled out. So here's the thing. So this is, I would kind of say this is tinfoil hat stuff, but not so much tinfoil hat as, what's the name of that hat? What's the hat that Holmes wears? Oh, man, now I gotta look that up. What's the, man.
Well, here, I'll let you click.
Yeah, look up whatever Sherlock Holmes wears. This is a little bit more in that range.
Investigator's cap, or no, I think that was a hunting cap.
Hunting cap. Doesn't sound as impressive as a tinfoil hat. But anyway. Okay, so because I heard Tim Pool talking about this, and there's kind of been speculation on the internet concerning impeachment. And this kind of ties into the next clip I've got queued up. So in the whole impeachment thing, the reason Nancy Pelosi held on to those documents for almost a month before passing them on to the Senate was to give Joe hopefully an advantage, because as that person mentioned, they're tied up in the Senate. They cannot do anything else. They are obligated to leave the campaign trail, show up in the Senate as part of that impeachment trial. The only one there was only two people who did not need to do that: Buttigieg and Biden. And granted, I think Yang is still technically in the runnings, but who cares? He's never been more than 1 or 2%, so he's not going to get anywhere. But Biden and Buttigieg, neither of them is a sitting senator. They get the campaign. So, it seems like they set that up and they held on to the impeachment documents in order to give... Well, I think they probably were hoping for Biden at that point, but after they saw, okay, yeah, Biden's probably losing, okay, we're shifting our focus to Buttigieg now. Buttigieg is our go-to guy. He is our Hillary for this cycle. And it seems like they don't want Bernie to win. That's the thing that they're trying to avoid the most, because it seems like Bernie actually won Iowa, and they did everything they could to make sure it was Buttigieg.
Yep.
And that seems a little more obvious when Buttigieg is the first one to announce, yep, we won.
It's because the initial reports, the earliest percentages showed Buttigieg in a slight lead above everybody else, and then all of a sudden, this shadow app screwed up, and we still to this point do not have 100% definitive results. The last results given were that Sanders and Buttigieg are tied like exactly down to 0.1%.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. So the company behind this is called Shadow Inc. or Shadow LLC or something. It's like, that's who do we want working on our side?
Even worse, Buttigieg is a contributor to the company.
Mm-hmm.
Soros is a contributor to that company. Now, there are some rumorings that the Clinton also are contributors to the company. That's been more kind of out there. So, again, a lot of speculation. What we do know for a fact is Buttigieg's campaign did contribute.
Yeah.
What we can be fairly certain of, while still, again, could be speculation, but there are very strong indicators, is that Soros also contributed to that. The Clinton thing, that's just tossed out there, so maybe shouldn't have brought that up. Again, speculation. No, I don't want to speculate, but...
Yeah. It definitely seems like everything's lining up one direction. But whether that is the case or not, like, there seems to be concerted efforts against Sanders. And I don't like Sanders. I think he's a terrible candidate. I think he would... Now, if he goes against Trump, I don't think he's going to win. I don't think anybody that is up for election could win.
Nope.
But I think if the Democrats, if they actually let the people who are Democrats vote the way they want, I think Bernie is going to walk away with this. But I don't think the DNC wants that. They don't want him to be the face of the DNC. They want... he's the last person they want to represent them because he's flat out crazy.
I can tell you a very decent possibility. The DNC is split between progressives and moderates. Moderates were basically controlled under the old school moderate campaign. So the Clintons, heavy sway with moderates. And those who they associated with, heavy sway with moderates. What almost caused Hillary to lose just to Bernie was this progressive push that was included in DNC, which is why Bernie had to be stopped in the 2016 election and why the DNC just cut him off. Mm-hmm. This is all stuff that is kind of out there and known now. It's because had he continued, the DNC would have realized it's not just us moderates who are trying to control our base and, who have our old political power and sway. We got this whole new group of radicals, extremists that were trying to say, we agree with you, hey, vote for us. They're not listening. Why aren't they listening?
So, so the establishment Democrats are people like the Clintons, like Pelosi and Schumer, all the people who had nothing but good things to say and actually learned from the guy who wrote the book, Rules for Radicals. And now they're concerned about radicals in the Democrat parties.
So they have inadvertently tied themselves to this radical base. And they've even started having some of their candidates, like Warren, who originally started out a little more moderate, still a little nutso, swung way to the left, stole all Bernie's ideas, said these are my ideas, tried to go more left than him, and everyone's like, "Man, you're a liar."
Yeah, but it's very
Stuck by his guns for a while. You know, not only did you lie to us about being Native American, you lied to us about being a teacher that was evicted from your job, even though they asked you to come back explicitly. Not only did you lie to us about your kids going to private schools, now you're lying to us about progressivism. Get out of here, lady. So they've already tried to play that. Yeah. If you look at Buttigieg's campaign trail, mid 2019, he started swinging a lot more left, going along Beto O'Rourke's path.
And then he kind of came.
And he said, "I'm going to ban all guns, and we're going to, if you don't agree, we're going to start basically taking your kids because you're not a fit parent," and all this weird nonsense. Dropped off the map. He was gone in a month. And so Buttigieg, you can actually see right after Beto O'Rourke dropped off the campaign trail, he started to go more back towards middle ground while still trying to keep a progressive base. He is the pawn. Yeah. That's why old school Democrats are saying, you know what, Biden, you blew it. Your eye blew it. Everything blew it.
You're too old.
Nobody likes you. Get out of there.
Yeah.
We're going to go with the puppet we can control.
Biden, you're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You're out of here.
Yeah, pretty much. So they are afraid of Bernie, and it's just because they've been kind of hugging shoulders, and putting their arms around him. "Oh, Bernie, you're all, we know you're on the left, but you're still a Democrat, right? Democrat?" And he's like, "Oh, Democratic Socialist." Yeah, you heard Democrat in there. They didn't get the idea that Bernie meant it on the socialist part. And now they realize that's his hardcore goal, and that academia has pushed that same message onto the youth that are now becoming radicalized and backing it. They are freaking the hell out.
So, I think the impeachment process kind of paved the way for what we're currently seeing with the early primaries. The other thing about the impeachment process, I keep going back and forth on this because I think last time we talked about this, I said, okay, looks like Nancy Pelosi didn't want to go through with impeachment because she thought it was politically a bad move. And I can't remember if it was Ben Shapiro or Michael Knowles who talked about this, but it was such a bad move that Trump may have to report the financial contributions to his campaign in 2020. He may have to report the whole impeachment process. Like, okay, yeah, it's a financial contribution from the DNC to my presidential bid. Because it was nothing but in his favor. So I keep going back and forth on whether Nancy was kind of forced into it against her will.
Yes. I am under that fair assumption. The reason I state that.
Yeah.
Do you ever listen to a dude called Mr. Reagan?
Yes. So Mr. Reagan came out with a video about Joe Biden a couple of days ago. Yeah.
But there is a book he was referencing where he said he got a lot of the information, but they had additional information that's not included in the book. But he hinted that it also included Pelosi, the Clintons. I mean, just a whole swarm of people on DNC. And yeah, there are some people who are potentially swayed on the Republican side. Not saying that it's all on one side. There are some people bought out on the DNC. Yeah. I mean, Mitt Romney kind of pops to mind just because how are you the only a-hole out of all Republicans ever to say on one?
And the Mitt Romney situation
and he
makes
said
me very, very angry.
Held because of God and his religion. Really? Dude, don't bring that up. Just
that to me it seems just as bad as people who were killing in the name of God and like dude it's and I was like you're gonna
Republicans or even Democrats are voting on the base of religion or whether if they're God-fearing people. No.
Yeah, maybe it's not as bad as killing in the name of God, but it's kind of like or like when a religious leader like a clergy or whatever abuses his parishioners, like in the case of the Catholic Church where they have sex with altar boys. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's kind of along the same lines where it's like, dude, there's a reason.
It's out within the religious aspect.
Yeah, there's a reason that's what the second commandment, or is it third?
I'm not sure what commandment you're thinking of.
The do not use the Lord's name in vain. That's.
Oh, I think that may be third. I don't believe that to be second. I'll have to look. I don't know. Either way.
Yeah.
No,
It's kind of one of those things. Is like, yeah, because it's not like, oh, I'm using my face. I'm like, dude, that is damaging to the reputation and image of God.
Well, I find that just as reprehensible as Pelosi coming out and saying she's praying for the country. And praying
I don't hate anybody. I'm a Catholic. I'm praying.
I'm like, really? You're praying for Trump? You're praying for him to be a better guy? You're praying for this country, and you're pulling this garbage? And then you're going to go in front of national television? Oh, sorry. I don't. That's
that's the next thing.
Yeah.
But, okay, so
you're going to do all that and still claim you're a Christian and you're praying. Come off it. Really?
All right. Well, actually, let's bump that ahead and let's just go to that. So the State of the Union, where she's praying for this country, she's praying for Trump, and yet the State of the Union, with the very 30% of it was kind of anti-Democrat. The other 70% was just, hey, everybody should agree these are good things. Like just the 30% involves, because he did mention, outlawing late-term abortion. He mentioned talking about like communism and all. It's like, I could understand Democrats not standing for that, but he had a Tuskegee Airman there. Oh, can't stand for that. Had a soldier returning home for his wife and kids. Oh, can't stand for that.
That was hard. Yeah. I didn't like to cry at all, but the Tuskegee Airmen, the girl who Trump said, you know what, you're taken care of. You're going to get the pick what school you're going to go to. I thought that was phenomenal. I watched her and her mom, Rush Limbaugh, and he just sitting there like, what? What did you just say?
Yeah. So there's a little bit on that, on whether he was surprised by receiving the Medal of Freedom or not.
But it's just a simple act. That's not normally something you would even do in a State of the Union.
And I have heard
beforehand or not.
Yeah. So did you watch Don't Walk Run? Because he was doing a live viewing of that and talked about that. And he's like, oh, should it be its own separate ceremony? I'm like, its own separate ceremony would be good, but the State of the Union is even more prestigious than a separate union or a separate thing to receive the Medal of Freedom, because everybody is there for the State of the Union. It's all it is broadcast on TV. Everybody's tuning in for this. It's so much more going to get so much more attention than if he had a separate ceremony just to receive the Medal of Freedom.
Yep.
So I think that was perfectly planned on his part. Although people like AOC and all those like, oh, Rush Limbaugh's a racist, evil guy, and I'm like, okay, I can see how that could be politically, maybe that's not something everybody can agree on. But all the other stuff,
definitely a hardcore old school conservative.
Yeah, but the other stuff you mentioned. The Tuskegee Airman and his great grandson or grandson, I can't remember which.
Yeah.
The soldier returning home and the girl getting the scholarship, and I was like, all of those things, those should be bipartisan, and yet you saw so many of them sitting down and just being like, oh, it's so.
Looking at that girl and saying that's the way the country is supposed to look at it, and as much as Trump gets flack and people call him racist and stuff, and he's calling out a single mom. And, African-American mom and a daughter saying, you know what, that's not right, and you can pick where you want to go. How is either the enemy has admitted defeat or the enemy is not the enemy, and they're actually wanting, no matter what, that's a wonderful thing for them. What are you sitting there staring like a scour-faced Scrooge?
Yeah, and I've got this link to the New York Post here. So this has got those events, and this is the one where there's video clips so Trump's given his speech, and I'm going to go ahead and play this. I don't know if you're watching it along, but
the pain.
Oh, I've seen
when a loved one is diagnosed with a serious illness.
She pulls it under the table.
Here tonight
kind of gives
is a special
and it comes back on the table. Oh, there's a rip
beloved
now.
By millions
Wasn't
of
there
Americans.
Before.
I think she was trying to test how many papers she could rip at once.
Yeah. So what that means is that she was planning almost from the beginning that she was going to rip the speech up. It wasn't I can't believe this, frustration. It wasn't a moment. It was a planned thing.
So if anybody does watch this, that whole event at the very start, Trump had 2 stacks of papers, his planned speech, and he turned around and he handed it to Mike Pence, and then he handed it to Nancy Pelosi, and it started to turn around while she was handing her handout. So it's unclear of whether he saw it or not.
Yeah,
it's a potential snub.
Not likely. So he hands it to her first, and then she reaches out her hands as he's handing it to Mike Pence, and then he turns the other way. He didn't shake Mike Pence's hand either.
No,
and as far as I can see, that's not the typical procedure anyway. There is no handshake when handing off the State of the Union. I don't know. I've gone back to a couple of those.
Yeah,
even when Obama was there, I didn't see him handing the State of the Union and also shaking hands of the people.
So the handshake part is not the normal part. What was against the normal part was the introduction of the president before the State of the Union, which there is a certain, just in reverence of being the president.
It is my honor to introduce the President of the United States. That's a typical introduction. Or it's my honor and pleasure, or honor and something.
There are certain, I guess, titles they're supposed to state with that.
But she just said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States." He still said the president, but it was less formal than it usually is. They're usually that title.
Yeah, all of the honorifics were ripped off of it. It was just simply the base title, and here he is.
Yeah.
So that was kind of outside the norms of a State of the Union for as long as we've got a documented history. That was outside. The handshake, iffy, and if you look at it, it's kind of one of those, if you hate Trump, you're going to see him as snubbing, or if you're pro-Trump, you can easily see he's already starting to look past Pence while he's handing these off and turn around because he's trying to...
Yeah, so I would say they would have an argument if he shook Pence's hand, like Pence reached out his hand and they both shook hands, and Nancy, you don't get a handshake. But the fact that he didn't give either of them a handshake, and he's just handing off papers and then turning around.
Regardless,
the other thing is
that's just the commencement of the State of the Union, and fine, she reached her hand out, whether he saw it or not, whether he snubbed it or not. That's not typically the norm anyway.
Yeah.
So but afterwards, why do that on camera? Why do that in front of the entire nation while staring at the back of the president's head? You can look her line of eyesight. The second and third rip, or I guess maybe not the second, the third stack of rips, she's looking right at the back of his head and
trying to burn holes in the back of it.
Pretty much. And there is no denying that. You can look at her line of sight. She's staring right at the back of his head. He's unaware.
Yeah.
And Pence is unaware because he's off at the crowd. So they're not noticing because they're there. They're doing what they do.
And here's the thing is, this is a day before the vote to acquit or charge the president for the impeachment. And Nancy Pelosi's like, I can't believe he snubbed my handshake. It's like, you have been running a impeachment trial against him.
Criminalize him and impeach him with no criminal activity.
Yeah. So even if she had stuck her hand out and he noticed it and was like, no, I could see that, because it's like, why should he shake your hand? You're not a honest, or you're not somebody who is somebody he can get along with. You are actively acting as his enemy. Why should he shake? Oh, I'm going to be the nice person and shake your hand. Like, Trump's like, no, even if I saw it, I probably wouldn't shake it, because it's you. You're my enemy. You have shown that time and time again.
He reached her hand out. His head was already like 3/4 of the way past her, because he's already handing the other side to Pence and completing his 360-degree turn. So it's extremely questionable on whether he even saw it.
Yeah. But I would say
we don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he saw it. I don't think he did it as a deliberate snub. But if he had, and if he had looked at her, saw her hand, and was like, no, and then turns the other way, I would be like, yeah, I perfectly understand at this point in time.
Yeah,
she
and that
has shown that she is not.
If he had actually saw it, look up in her face and said, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, so she has shown that. I can understand she's not his friend. She doesn't have to be his friend, but she's not somebody he can actually work with either. She has shown that she's not interested in working with him. She's not interested in doing it. And so I guess I'm going back to a previous point, because I did mention I think Nancy Pelosi might have been stuck where she was forced into that sort of thing, but I'm starting to think it might not have been because of people like AOC and the more radical members of the Democratic Party.
Tied in more on the Biden side of dirty politics.
Yeah.
He had
so Biden, Clinton, and also things like, well, this is tinfoil hat, but it seems kind of like unavoidable at this point. Shadow government type thing. Like, so the what's that called? The deep state. That's the term being used. It's like, it seems like maybe they had some kind of dirt or something on Pelosi, and they're like, yeah, you're going to do it our way. And here's why I'm starting to think that more. Because when I was listening to Viva Fry and Barnes talk about this, they mentioned this is the first time for impeachment that impeachment has been run by the Intelligence Committee. The Intelligence Committee that works alongside with the CIA and the FBI. This is the first time in history. And it was run by Adam Schiff, who's the head of that committee. And it's like, that's not normal. That's not the normal process.
Especially when the FBI reports directly to Trump. They are under his jurisdiction.
Yeah. So there's two things that are absolutely unique to Trump's... Well, I guess there's multiple things that are absolutely unique to Trump's situation. So first of all, the House never had a formal vote to start impeachment, which is required. Because it's supposed to go to the House floor, they vote whether to start impeachment, and then it goes to the, I forget the committee. It's the whatever one Nadler's in charge of, I think, which might be the Ethics Committee or something along those lines. I don't know if you remember which one. I think it might be the Ethics Committee. That's where they usually do this in the House. Rather than have the vote on the floor, they avoided that completely. It went to the Intelligence Committee, and I'm like, as soon as they mentioned that, I'm like, that's not normal, that has never happened before, but it's also the wrong committee, and it's the committee that deals directly with the intelligence agencies. Now I'm starting to see there might be more to this than just, hey, they hate Trump, and it's like, yeah, they hate Trump. They could have sent this to the House floor, probably had enough Democrat votes to vote to start the impeachment process, done it through the regular means. The other thing, there's a bunch of things that are unique to the situation. The other thing is, they never gave the Republicans their day. That's the first time in impeachment history that they're the opposite. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, you are correct. That never happened. The Republicans were not given the opportunity to call forth witnesses or do their own interrogation within, say, I guess, a more formal or public standing. If any of that did happen, that was all done behind closed doors, which may have presented before the Senate. We're not quite sure. We don't know how much private and public within what the House.
Yeah. So they initially started off where it was all closed. They didn't allow it anybody. Then they opened it up to everybody, and they said the Republican witnesses had to be approved beforehand by Schiff, and he had to approve the questions. And there was a couple of times where they asked questions, and he said, no, don't answer that because they're related to the whistleblower, and that might identify the whistleblower, which, granted, and if you look at the whole context, Schiff knows who the whistleblower is, despite having... It's because they'll ask questions about, hey, this random person name, not a problem. Hey, this random person name, not a problem. Hey, this random person name, not a problem. Hey, this individual that everybody knows, not to say their name on YouTube. Oh, nope, can't answer that question.
It's like that public dirty secret. It's basically the public dirty secret. It's the same case they take in Hollywood where it's just a known. You just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to follow proper protocol or, face value of the way things are operated, well, you just can't. But
yeah. And
obviously, we already got pictures. We got the dude's name. This all leaked out about like 2 weeks after all of that became blown out. And it turns out the dude is a fairly partisan hack.
Yep.
Just like the rest of everybody within the House that is on the leadership of the Democrat side of the House. One of my potential solutions to help alleviate is tie a few more balloons to Nadler's house maybe he would have floated a little higher, and one less guy to worry about. He looks like the dude from Up.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until that's pretty
really
awesome.
He's got the jowls and the whole demeanor and just the build, everything.
So,
the suit looks like the dude from Up. Just tie a bunch of balloons when he goes home and whoop, he's off to.
Yeah. So everything so far that has been a blatant attack against Trump have all started from the intelligence community.
Yes, and it's the same intelligence community that was telling us of all the corruption from Russia, or not from Russia, but from Ukraine, of which Biden was tied into. That was his premise of firing the previous investigator. The only reason a lot of this fell apart, or what people don't seem to understand, is that brand new president of Ukraine, brand new governing body, all happened just last year in May. Zelensky, he was a comedian, not a politician, got elected because he said, I'm tired of the corruption. He said he followed along with the same lines that Trump did. Got elected because the populace was so tired of the corruption in Ukraine. And after he got elected, their parliament, most of their heads of state were let go. It's an entirely new body. And Trump called him after he got elected and after the new body was elected and saying, let's investigate corruption. And this was well before, in the earlier parts of the phone call. He didn't even bring up Biden until like the last 2/3 of the phone call. He just brought it up. At that point, I think Trump made a boo-boo. Maybe shouldn't have not brought it up in that phone call. Maybe there were other subtle ways to say, you know what? I get that this could be corrupt, but because I'm tied in with Biden right now, there are other ways. I don't think he should have brought that up on the phone call.
Yeah, so going
to was just, we've done a lot of good for Ukraine. This is a parliament body. This is a new president. We're getting word of a lot of corruption. Are you going to do anything about it? And that president said, yeah, because that's why I got elected.
Yeah. So,
like, cool.
So, yeah, you say he may not, it probably wasn't a good thing for him to bring up. I don't think there's anything wrong with him bringing up because it seems like, so here's the way I see it. It's like, okay.
Well, it falls in line with the corruption. It's just, that's the one thing they've been picking out.
Yeah. But so here's the thing. If Biden is guilty of wrongdoing, and it seems to have a pattern of that, as you said with the Reagan video, and apparently people have been doing research and stuff.
Massive pattern. They were in Ukraine well before that conversation ever happened.
Yeah.
So not just Biden. We have also got a former CIA operative. We've got other people. What was it? John Kerry's stepson.
Yeah.
Was also aboard on the same company.
Yeah. Well, and the other guy, the guy who's partners with Hunter Biden, is in jail. The other guys who are running businesses with them, also in jail for corruption and running Ponzi schemes. Like, dude, this is...
How entranced are we into Ukraine's energy sector to our vice president's son, a former person running for presidency, their stepson isn't on the board. A CIA operative is on the board. What are we doing there? That's not politics. That's supposedly a private entity, an energy board of an energy company. How is that not under scrutinization?
Yeah, there's the other thing is everywhere Biden went as part of his vice president, the family or somebody neck close to him was making money, and you're like,
with China, his son and his brother. Millions, and I think it's now into the billions of dollars from private Chinese entities doing business with Biden's other than directly with Joe Biden.
Yeah, this is all so interconnected. It is very bizarre because that kind of ties into the next thing, which is emoluments. Because emoluments is kind of was kind of what they were doing, right? Using their political office to provide financial benefit for their kids and their family. And that's what they tried to charge Trump with because he owns hotels and businesses in other countries that make money.
That's the odd part, is that the Bidens didn't get this
They didn't have businesses before the political.
He was in his political position, at which point he was able to be an emissary via the vice presidency to allow this to other relatives of his own family.
Yeah.
And if you look at Trump, this was all built before he even decided to run for president.
Yeah.
And in fact, when he decided to run for president, he assigned all responsibility to the rest of his family and said, I get no income, I'm done.
Yeah.
Walked away.
But the other thing is, his family has been losing money as a result of his running for president. He hasn't been gaining money. Oh, they're making millions of dollars. No.
He did the one thing you're supposed to do, because if you look at the early settlement of the the United States and the Constitution, most of the voters and most of the people elected into president or offices were wealthy individuals, business owners, landowners, title owners, and they were supposed to give it up.
Yeah.
And basically be president while getting no income and stating, I'm just president.
Yeah.
I'm only here because I'm sacrificing and I want the betterment of the country.
Compare that to...
Actually done that because he assigned all of his income to everybody else except for him.
Yeah.
And he still held that. And in fact, his presidential income, the $400K per year, he doesn't accept. Look where his money goes just from what he's supposed to be paid to be president.
Yeah.
He did not accept it. He's done.
So this is a vast... if you compare... With Republicans, there are some people who became politicians as Republicans and then made their financial gains after becoming politicians. But there are far more Republicans who started off financially well off, entered politics, and they may have grown a little bit after that, but they haven't blown up their fortunes. Meanwhile, like, if you look at all the Democrats who have become multimillionaires after getting elected, so the Obamas, the Clintons, Biden, Pelosi, Warren, it's debatable on whether she was a multimillionaire before getting into office because she was a Harvard professor and they were paying her, several $100,000 a year, and her husband is also working, so they might have hit $1 million before becoming in office, but they're now multimillionaires after getting into office. Sanders was broke, living on other people's couches and all that sort of thing. After getting into politics, multi-millionaire, owns multiple houses. It's like, if you look at, you might be able to find a handful of that happening on Republican side, but, throw a quarter in the Senate or the House and try to find it, and if you hit a Democrat, you got rich after becoming a politician. It's like you'd be lucky if you hit the one or two that didn't.
Yeah, it's like hopping in the middle of a pool of piranhas. It's just when Democrats are in charge, the value kind of expands about, and those ties tend to hang around.
Yeah, and it's not just the salary, because they get a couple $100,000 a year to be a member of Congress or something like that. It's like a $120,000 or somewhere in that range, $130,000.
Maybe up to like 170 now.
Yeah, maybe 170, 180. But if you're in there for 4 years, even at that salary, you can expect to have maybe $500,000 by the time you're done. And there's people who will go in for 4 years and come out multi-millionaires. That's not...
Average person working out in just the regular public sector, $60,000 is a nice paycheck.
Yeah.
Or a nice hefty sum coming in per year.
Well, there are a lot of people in the private sector who make $200,000 a year, and they still haven't reached that multi-millionaire mark after 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 years making that salary. And you're like, it seems like with politicians, no, 4-year multi-millionaire in politics? That's not, and like I said, it seems like maybe in the Republican side, there's like 10% that have the same, but on the Democrat side, it's like 1 to 5% that haven't achieved that. Right. It's not for lack of trying, it's because they're bad at it.
What I'm guessing happened here in the U.S. is that the DNC has always been built off of pulling more political sway and pulling more value just based off of office and persuasion. We've seen countless interactions. And yeah, this does happen on the Republican side. So anybody listening to chat, you know, I get it. There are plenty of Republicans that can be corrupted.
Yeah.
It's not a one-sided thing. It's just consistently on one side.
Yeah, it's
kind of like you have consistent.
It's kind of like yin and yang.
Offshoots over on the Republican side. I'm not saying Republicans are altruistic all the time or that they are the greatest of representation of the public. It's just, for the most part, Republicans just, hey, this is the way I was elected and this is the way society seems to be, and so I'll just follow along.
Yeah, so when you're talking about... Yeah, so I said it's a little bit like yin and yang, whereas like the Democrats would be the entirely black, like all evil with a little bit of good, and Republicans would be like the all good with a little bit of that.
Well, I think this is where it swayed. In 2016, Bernie was neck and neck with Hillary. The DNC tried to use the progressive movement, this understanding from academia that was being brought about socialism, about Marxism, about communism. Why this seems to be on the rise is because our youth are being indoctrinated with this, and they thought they could manipulate it. And the more it continues, the more they realize, I think we just brought a pot of demon, and we need to squash it. Because from a Democratic side or Republican, the communist Marxist side of things is like worst case scenario. Wars have been fought over more than this.
Yeah, and that was unexpectedly kind of a brilliant setup to the next thing I'm going to talk about, because you talked about... So the DNC's problem right now is they got in bed with these radical socialists, and they're kind of like, they bit off more than they can chew, and now they're kind of saddled. Same thing with impeachment is like, well, okay, let's start with the Russiagate. The first thing was the Russiagate, and now they got, okay, we can't do that, and then they go on to the Ukraine gate, and then the impeachment, and they keep getting so entrenched in this, and they're kind of like, now they're looking back and regretting it, and now they're in a situation where they're in a free fall, which sets up this next clip. So I don't know if I should have sent you. It should be the last link I sent you in the Hangouts. I don't know if I'm going to play the whole thing, but I'm at least going to play like about a minute of this, because this was absolutely fantastic. And when I saw this, I was like, man, this relates. I don't know how they timed it like this, but it relates so much. And maybe they don't see it, but this is what I saw when I saw this scene. So this is from BoJack Horseman. It's one of the... I don't know if it's the last episode or second to last episode. It's toward the end of the season. It's not so much a spoiler as in it doesn't really impact. From the minute I'm going to play, you can't really get too much out of the story, but this is really awesome and powerful here. And the character speaking is not the main character, BoJack, just for clarification. But
a poem. Original, obviously. It's called The View from Halfway Down. The weak breeze whispers nothing. The water screams sublime. His feet shift, teeter-totter. Deep breath, stand back, it's time. Toes untouched the overpass. Soon he's waterbound. Eyes locked shut, but peak to see. The view from halfway down. I'm not done. Hold on. I'm not done. I'm not done. A little wind, a summer sun, a river rich and regal. A flood of fond endorphins brings a calm that knows no equal. You're flying now. You see things much more clear than from the ground. It's all okay. It would be. Were you not now halfway down? Thrash to break from gravity. What now could slow the drop? All I'd give for toes to touch the safety back at top. I changed my mind. I changed my mind. I don't want to...
It's okay.
But this is it. The deed is done. Silence drowns the sound. Before I leaped, I should have seen the view from halfway down. No, I really should have thought about the view from halfway down.
Find your peace, big guy. Find it.
I wish I could have known about the view from halfway down.
All right. Man, that is such a good poem, and just fantastic, and it's
holy crap, dude. Okay, so I've never seen that.
Yeah.
It is scary when you said, I wish I could have seen the view from halfway down.
Yeah. And I saw this, and I'm looking online.
Like, there is no other side. It's okay. Like, just, you're already done. Just accept it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Here's the thing. I thought that was a poem from something else. That was written exclusively for the show, and I'm like, this is a comedy show. It has a lot of drama elements. It's all over the place, and I'm like, that is one of the most powerful scenes I've ever seen in anything, and it's written specifically for this show. It's not. I was like, dude, that's got to be some kind of poem out of something else that they're reading for this show because it fits the scene. I'm like, that was absolutely brilliant. And like I said, it kind of fits. It seems so politically, or I guess maybe even societally, like relevant right now.
I would say
People have gone so far and we've split so much. They're like, I wish we could have seen this back when we started doing this, because now it's too late to still pull it back. And I'm like, man, that is excellent.
Well, so when I see a perfect a kind of accompaniment with that is within the DNC. I'm under the impression after 2020, if Trump is reelected, the DNC will split into two parties because they can no longer coincide with one another. It's because we have a radical side and then we have your old school, your libertarian, your moderates, what used to be considered just your average Democrats, of which I miss, and I don't want to say that.
It's kind of like, compared to the Democrats we're seeing now and the leftists we're seeing now, I would have rather had, say, the Bill Clinton era.
Yes,
even though
it's a horrible thing. I don't.
90s era Democrats wouldn't be so bad compared to what we have.
I would just take a discussion between the DNC and the GOP back in the early 90s versus what we've got now, because they are not on the same lines at all.
Yeah, and I don't know if you said that on purpose. Sorry, you just said back in the 90s. I'm like, that's the BoJack theme song. That it starts off back in the 90s. I was in a very famous TV show, because that's the whole setup for the show.
Oh, well, I've never watched the show.
I was like, man, that probably wasn't intentional, but that's
not at all.
Weird.
It's just that's when things fell apart.
Yeah, so like
something happened between the late 90s and where we are today, where the DNC is like actually two separate parties, a communist party and just your old school moderates. And what we used to consider left was the old school moderates. Mm-hmm. And I think the Republicans are scared because they're like, well, here used to be the left, and over there's way the fuck off to the left. What is that alien species? How did you ever bring that aboard? What is wrong with you? That's not human. And the worst part is the primary majority of what's leading that is the youth. Mm-hmm. From modern academia, we spawned through our
useful idiots.
Yes,
created generations of useful idiots.
We've had so much prosperity. We've had so much thrust forward on our youth. We haven't actually said, work for what you want, and we're going to pay the cost. Now they feel they get what they want simply because it should be there. That's dangerous. So dangerous. That was the embodiment of slavery. That was the embodiment of the downfall of so many civilizations. It's just, I deserve it, so give it. Mm-hmm. It's the worst type of humanity. And I don't think that progressives are the worst type of humanity. They're just in that mindset. They feel they are owed. Why? I don't know, man.
Because the leftists have been telling them their entire lives, other people took your stuff. Not other people earned your stuff while you were sitting on your butt doing nothing. Or earned their stuff. They're not being taught that lesson. Most Republicans and most conservatives are taught that, like, if somebody has something, that's because they worked to earn it. If you don't have it, it's because you haven't put the work and time to earn it.
Much to get it.
Yeah, but the leftists are always taught, if somebody has something, that's because they took it from other people.
Yeah. It's because they didn't earn it. They took it from someone else. And because they took it from someone else, if I can identify with the oppressive or oppressed, then I will be owed what was taken.
Yeah, that's the argument for reparations and all that sort of things. They're saying the United States was built on slavery. And I'm like, okay, if slavery is how you generate wealth and how you build a country and make it a world superpower, why isn't Lebanon a world superpower? Slavery is still active there, and it's not in closed communities like what they say, oh yeah, slavery is still worldwide. I'm like, no, that's human trafficking. It's usually illegal. We try to track it down as much as possible. We're trying to eliminate it as much as possible. That's like saying murder is still the norm because acts of murder happen. It's like, no, we try everything we can to track down murders and stop and prevent it. In Lebanon and parts of Africa, it happens, it's open, it's known secret, nothing's being done to stop it. There are other countries, like even in Middle East, where women are treated as second-class citizens, basically slaves. If they go out without their husband, they get killed for it. I mean, it's like, how is that any different from saying, oh, slave left the plantation without master's orders, all right, send the dogs after him. I'm like, that's the same, it's, the women are the property of the husbands, or the guardian.
For you. Just something I've been kind of wondering for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you are a patriarch of a well-to-do family, right? You've established your wealth, you've built up your empire, you've got some things you can pass down. If you're a smart patriarch, you would look at your offspring and say, I want to hand you what I've accomplished, but you need to earn what you can accomplish, and so I'm not going to give you anything. And so therefore, your offspring are going to look at you as a horrible person,
like a curmudgeon, or
but you never give it up.
That, because if you like, that's the kind of the Knives Out, or there's a couple other that kind of like, oh, the old man's dying and he makes us do stuff to earn his will, and they look at it, oh, he's just a greedy old guy making us do stuff, and all these children are spoiled and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's that
it's children. Why couldn't you just pass that on? Why is he giving it to everybody else except for us? He must love everybody else except for us. When your only intention was, I only got here because I followed that same route. I only got here because I earned it. You should only get there because you've earned it. I learned my lessons through my fight, through my struggle. And I want you to understand that fight and struggle are part of it. So if you just disregard that and you don't do, say, the inheritance tax, you don't pass on what your accumulated wealth to your descendants. Instead, you just, hey, let me help some inner city children. And then you got your offspring hating you because you amassed all this wealth and you pass nothing on, and they feel you don't love them. Ultimately, you're trying to teach them the best love is the reason I got here in the first place. And I want to do the same thing I did because you're my descendants and I think you can. And yet that's not being portrayed. No, on the flip side, even if you did do that, you're still looked at as a patriarch, as someone that leached off of those who are less capable. You have sucked up the wealth of those who were employed underneath you. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't even matter if you gave it to charity. It doesn't matter if you gave it to those who are struggling.
That's the thing. It's like the guy, Jeff Bezos, gives to charity, and I'm like, oh, that's such a small portion of your fortune. It's like, it's $50 million.
That's a lot of freaking money.
That's more than most people are ever able to give in their lifetime.
Yes. So it almost seems the successful are just meant to be to be torn down.
Have you read Atlas Shrugged?
I've seen the movies. I haven't read the books yet.
The movies are kind of They're about 5 or 6 on a scale of 10 for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Read the book, or like, so the first time I wouldn't recommend reading the physical book. I would recommend listening it to an audio tape. That was my first time, because the book is really lengthy and it can be a little dry. I saw the movie first and I was like, man, these characters are so wooden. And then I listened to the audiobook and I read the book. And I was like, as you go through the whole story, you're like, no, they're not wooden. I understand exactly. It's not the George Lucas character creation. There is a reason they're so matter of fact and kind of like removed from their emotions. It makes perfect sense within the story arc of that.
Well, it's because on a George Lucas scale, his characters tend to embody that which is of great success and therefore come out on top. On the Aaron Rand aspect, it is more of, it doesn't matter what you have succeeded, it will never be appreciated.
Yeah.
And that is the basis of humanity. And so what else are you left with other than to segregate yourselves from the rest of humanity and look for individuals?
So I should say the George Lucas characters come off, like, with the exception of Obi-Wan in the prequels, a lot of the characters come off as wooden and not having a real personality. I guess maybe Jar Jar Binks and Obi-Wan.
I think he has depth, well, at least till the Crystal Skull. I liked his character till then, so.
Yeah, so with the Star Wars prequel, they talked about his characters being wooden and wooden dialogue, and that's because they're supposed to be emotional in those moments, and they come off as flat. Whereas in Atlas Shrugged, all of the main characters are purposefully not acting on emotion and purposely controlling their emotions, because the counter is all the people who are destroying society are run by almost exclusively emotions.
It would have been a million times worse.
Yeah, it's to display that contrast. Is all of the characters who, oh, we're just helping the poor. Oh, what, you have no heart. You don't care about other people. Those are the people actively destroying the society.
Okay.
It's to create that dichotomy between the people, the bad guys and the good guys. Like, the good guys, they're stoic, they control their emotions, they still have them, they still understand, but they're like, yeah, I've got to do what is logical. I got to put my mind as my most powerful tool and let the emotional people don't
modern
care.
Socialism.
Yeah.
Let's say you're a parent, you have children. So, the modern socialism, it is the greater good. You are not supposed to pick your children over the rest of society.
Yeah.
At no point as a parent are you supposed to look at your children and say, I want the best for you because you're my offspring.
Yeah, and that goes back to the Communist Manifesto that we were talking about.
Because you have done the will of society. Mm-hmm. And if you have not done so, then you are disgraced. That familial bond is trashed. Mm-hmm. Is stripped away completely. That which makes us human, that which combines us, that which associates one another. And, I don't understand Kim Jong-il. I don't understand what's going on in North Korea. I don't understand, Vladimir Putin. But what I can understand is that we are all human. Mm-hmm. But you strip that away, we do not even have that common sense. If you do not agree to the greater machine, you obviously are not looking out for the subsistence of humanity. You're the enemy of humanity. That seems to be where that was headed. So Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is.
Yeah, and
it's ludicrous. It's something that we shouldn't even consider, and yet the further we get, and especially in 2020, the more it actually makes sense. And I am scared because why should that ever make sense? That's horrible.
Yeah, it seems like that's a dystopian future that never could happen here, and it's starting to see like, okay, that's starting to look, it's like Idiocracy. It's starting to be more prophetic than.
You are correct. Yeah, Ayn Rand, 5 years or almost 10 years ago when I first even heard of their name and first started even looking up literature. Less than 10 years, the movies started popping up, and I'm watching them. I'm like, some of that makes sense. It still has this idea of, I could see it coming, but I don't want it.
Oh.
And the more we get further in the future, the more I'm like,
All right.
Did Ayn Rand seen something that I'm missing?
But she saw it happen in real time in Russia. That's why she started to see elements of that sneaking into the U.S. and was like, if this happens, this is how it's going to go. I don't think she could have predicted how quickly it happened in the U.S. and how devastating it's going. But she's kind of like, it was a little. It's not necessarily prophetic as it was a warning of what could happen. If it's kind of like the Ghost of Christmas Future. Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like, this may not happen, but.
The assumptions based off the railways and certain fuels are still. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But
they're dated for their time.
Of that, humanity will lose what makes humanity in order to say the simple subsistence of human life is beyond what it means to be human, and beyond what it means to understand your own family, your own offspring.
Yeah.
None of those no longer matter. You're now simply a cog in the machine.
Yeah, and so there's this ties into the overall conversation, but the main reason I bring in Atlas Shrugged specifically is there's a character in there, Francisco D'Antonio. He was kind of downplayed in the movies a little bit. He plays a kind of a more significant role in the books because he was a childhood friends with them, and they kind of go into the background story. So his family was extremely wealthy. Like, so his great-grandfather, or possibly his grandfather, I don't remember which, started, it basically bought a mine, worked it until it was, near ragged, gained his fortune, refused to pass that fortune on to his son, told his son, if you want my fortune, you have to earn your own fortune. If you earn your own fortune, then you can have access to mine. Because the D'Antonio who doesn't earn what is passed down to him will be the end of the family line. And that's what they kept going. So, the great-grandfather or possibly the grandfather passed that on to the grandfather or the dad, and it's passed on, and then it's passed on to this Francisco D'Antonio. And so in the story, when he's like 11 or 12, he's like, his family is living in mansions and traveling around the world. He doesn't get to participate in that. And instead, what he's doing is working on the rail lines, telling the conductor that's doing that, he's telling him that he's 14 and not 11, and he's working and shoveling coal because he's like, yeah, I'm going to earn my place in this family. I'm going to earn my fortune. I'm gonna be worthy of the family name. And I was like, dude, yeah. So you're reading through that, I'm like, man, that is awesome. So, granted, I don't have anything to pass on to my kids, and I don't have kids or a family, but I still have time. I still got... So, eventually, when I do earn my fortune and get that place, I'm going to pass on enough for my kids to live with, so they'll never be homeless or starving on the streets and never anything like that. I mean, granted, unless they get involved in drugs, but hopefully that's not the case, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure, like, dude... Yeah, if I'm going to give you every reason not to get on anything like that, and if you do choose that route, I can't stop you, but not, your choice, but I'm going to make sure that you've got every other option available besides that. But when I earn my fortune, which I plan on doing that, the rest of it is like, yeah, in order to get beyond just a mediocre living, you're going to have to earn anything else after. You're going to have to earn the business. And yep. Donald Trump is actually doing that with his kids. None of them have been sitting in the lap of luxury just lounging off a daddy and becoming Paris Hiltons. All of them have had to prove themselves in the financial industry and proven themselves in one way or the other to...
You are correct. So I would almost argue it's not the wealth being transferred from one generation to the next. It's the knowledge and understanding of the opposition and the triumphs and the hardships that one has gone through to get to their current status that is being passed along. And the only way you will ever equate to the family name, the only way you'll ever build up to where we've been is you will have to go through the same hardships. You're going to have to go through the same trials. So it's not about the money, and it's never been about the money. It is entirely about the trials and what you can prove from the trials you've been through. And if that's the way all families operated, subsequent generations, like measurably from one generation to the next, would improve drastically. But we see a lot of generations where you're provided with a basic subsistence of life, and you say, yep, good enough. And push no standard upon your offspring.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the cases with the aristocrats and royalties of old.
Is it wrong to teach your children, I'm going to put you through a lot of hardship?
No, that's what you should be doing.
Come out a strong, competent person.
Yeah.
Or are you a bad parent by saying, because I've subjected you to the harshness of life?
I don't say... The harshest of life is probably not the appropriate approach. but it is your responsibility as a parent to train your children to be independent adults. That is the responsibility of every parent. Your primary responsibility is, I'm going to make sure that you, when you get to the age of adulthood, you can provide for yourself, you can provide for family. You don't need to depend on me or the rest of the family. You can make it on your own. And if I cannot provide you the tools you need for that, if I cannot prepare you for that, I have failed as a parent.
So I've got a question for you.
Yep.
There is a large debate right now about inheritance tax, or whether or not inheritance is even able to be passed on, right? You established a wealth, an estate, or what have you, and should that be able to be passed on?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yes, I agree it should be able to be passed on, but within the same light of what we were discussing, if you're a smart parent, I think you should be allowed to set aside some of what you've built and state, you know what, if you need the extra money, you need the extra back, you need to know where you came from, graduate and have a bachelor's degree, and then you can have what I've stored in this bank account. You know, kind of
that's a stipulation on a lot of trust funds.
Yes.
Like, hey, you have access to this until you're 18. Once you're 18, you have to earn your degree, or you have to get involved, or you lose access to the trust fund and it goes to charity. That's correct. So that sort of thing.
Like the charity, and then any extra funds outside of what I put in a trust fund would just be put into a charity. It is where I decide I want my money and my life's work to go. And so I don't see a problem with that. But if we could have allowance to where you are allowed to stipulate a certain.
No, I say that no. So I'm not sure why you're saying allowed to stipulate, like as if the government should have a say in this.
Heavy contention on whether any generation is allowed to provide anything for their offspring.
Well, they earned it, didn't they? Or did they steal it?
No, it's just inheritance.
No. So the person who is planning on giving their stuff away, they earned it, didn't they?
Yes.
So it's theirs to give it if they want.
I started turned 18. Now has access to all of my funds. I'm passed away. He's got all of my funds.
Yeah.
Right. So there's tension onto whether that should be allowed or not.
That's because those people don't understand the right to own property, because as the person who earns the money, as the person who owns the money, it is yours to control. If you want to give it away to your mailman, those people are like, yeah, you're allowed to do that. If you want to give it away to foreigners in Africa, yeah, you're allowed to do that. If you want to give it away to cancer research, yeah, you're allowed to do that. If you want to give that away to your children, no, what are you thinking? You can't do that. I'm like,
correct.
Who earned the money? Whose money is it? Is it the person who put in the work, who built the business, is it their money? Or is it society's money?
You are correct.
If it's society's money, then society can dictate what the person does with it. If it's the person who owns the money, nobody else gets a say on what happens to that money.
You are correct. So I would say, as an intelligent parent, someone who is paying attention to those types of laws, would you build a massive wealth if you were capable of that, only to find out your children are not entitled to any of that because governance through society or state laws or federal laws will just strip it all away and say, no, you're not entitled. So, we don't do inheritance permissions, or we have a heavy inheritance tax, or 90% is taken.
Because a lot of these socialist Democrats have talked about a 100% inheritance tax, as in you die, all of the money that you had built up goes to the government.
Correct.
That would mean...
what can you pass on that can never be stripped away, regardless if they pass an inheritance tax? And we've already hinted on that. Is it the life lessons of earn what you can earn? Be somebody who is valuable. You must go work for what you want. I want to provide for you, as every parent should. I can provide for you while you're alive and while I'm alive, and you are my offspring. At some point, the world is going to rip it away.
Yeah. So here's the thing with the inheritance tax.
To be ever negated.
Yeah. So with the inheritance tax, if you are, like, say, a millionaire, and your life's work would be subject to the inheritance tax, how much more above $1 million would you earn? likely not very much. Maybe you'd get to 2 million, but there's no way you could get to $1 billion because you can't possibly spend $1 billion in your entire lifetime. And if everything you earn over, say, $1 million or 2 million is going to go to the government, why would you sacrifice time away from your family? Why would you sacrifice time away from your hobbies? Why would you sacrifice time away from doing what you want to do in order to run a business so that way all of the money you ended up... So let's say you reach the age of 40 and you've reached your fortune. You're financially set. You don't have to work a day in your life if you don't want to. But every day you work after 40, you're not going to see a benefit of that. Every day you work after 40 is going straight to the government because of inheritance tax.
Yep.
How many people that reach that soft cap are going to keep building a fortune?
Yep.
If 100% inheritance tax, people are going to be like, I've reached 2 million. That's enough for me to spend in the rest of my lifetime. I can spend the rest of my life doing whatever I want without working, without worrying about finances.
Not necessarily.
I'm done working. I'm not going to become a multi-billionaire like Bezos. I'm not going to become a multi-billionaire like Zuckerberg or Clinton or Bloomberg. I'm done. And what that means is how many jobs between 2 million and $1 billion? How much economic growth between those? Not for the person earning the money, for other people. Like their accountants, how many other people are being boosted economically because these people keep building their businesses?
Yes. What if I were to tell you there are a lot of people in rich positions who are in the same quandrum or, same conundrum that you're already in because this is not the first time this has ever been proposed.
Mm-hmm. What people will do is they'll stop storing it as money and goods and they'll go and put it into things that the government can't touch.
You are correct. And even if you're a good-hearted person, you would have done the same thing in order to secure the patronage, the existence of your own family after your existence.
Yep.
Even if you're not a bad person, you're still going to pursue those routes because you understand that what you have worked for will be stripped from you simply because you're at the end of your life. Nothing's going to be attributed to children. You have been robbed of everything you've been working for if the entire empire you built was supposed to be for your children.
Yeah. So you go the Ron Swanson route, you buy gold, and you bury it all around town at places only you know and that you plan on telling your children when you...
Yeah. So what I'm going to say is I don't think all rich people are in with this cabal. I think some people just happen upon it. I think fortune just shines upon those who are successful. Mm-hmm. But I do think that because of regulation, because of humanity, and because of greed, laws always boil down to that simple envious ideology of you have more than me and I want it.
It's not necessarily even you have more than me. It's so because some of these people are well off. Like Bernie Sanders is now a multimillionaire, and he's still like, if you aren't doing something for me, you're doing it wrong.
Sure, but if he doesn't stand up for what he thinks is within line with his political ideology, let's say he just decides to retire, another socialist pops up, and now everything Bernie Sanders owns is stripped from him because it was all gained while he was in the Senate. He is now entrapped in that entire system.
So here's the thing: is a social say Bernie Sanders retire. Yeah. So say Bernie Sanders retire. He's a multimillionaire. He's out of the Senate and all that. And in 2028, a radical socialist is president, and Congress has mostly full of socialists. They pass a law. Who are the first person they're coming after? They're not coming after Bezos, and they're not coming after Zuckerberg, and they're not coming after Trump. The first people they're going after are Bernie Sanders. People who have retired, people who have stopped working. Those are the first victims. The people who have stopped contributing. Because Trump's business is still going to keep going. That's the workhorse. Even socialists are not so stupid that they would destroy the things keeping them afloat. The first people they're going after, eventually they'll get there. The first people they go after are the people just like them. So if you watch the progression of communist regimes, communist regime takes over, the first people they go after are the people pushing for that regime and that change. And then, once those guys are out of the way, then they move on to the bourgeoisie or whatever.
You are correct.
Bernie Sanders would be first in line.
Within their same standards.
Yeah.
You are.
And then eventually they go for the Trump, and then they kill themselves on their own bloat.
I recently got in a conversation with a couple of supposed socialists, self-proclaimed socialists, on a Discord chat. Mm-hmm. First thing they said is, before socialists comes capitalism. And I was like, wait, well, hold on. I thought you guys were in opposition. And they're like, well, it's more of a necessary evil. And I'm like, whoa. If you cannot sustain socialism and it requires capitalism, then is it not therefore the same evil as socialism, as its precursor or step towards? And they're like, well, yes, we agree to that. You can't build the economy without the capitalism. We understand that's where the economic sustenance comes from. And I was like, well, hold on. If this is what builds economic growth and then you change it, wouldn't you just either stifle or cut off economic growth, and therefore you have no plan for the future? What are you guys asking for? You're now dictating that capitalism is a requirement of socialism. That is modern socialism. They're so stupid. They understand.
So they're saying it's a necessary evil, and their system can't get by without it, without being evil.
Yeah, that's how dumb it's gotten. They are now stating capitalism is just simply the introductory period of socialism. And I brought up the point, well, if capitalism works, why switch to another system? And they're like, well, because it's more beneficial. I'm like, if you cannot build wealth without capitalism, and if you cannot grow an economy without capitalism, and then you decide, well, let's kill capitalism, what do you expect to happen? No answer.
Yeah, these people don't see the view from halfway down.
They don't see the view from anything. Modern socialism has now gone beyond just the opposition of capitalism. They're trying to absorb it and state the U.S. is in the current progression to socialism, and it is the natural step forward, and that socialism is a presupposition or a dependent, but is only a precursor to socialism and thus forward capitalism. As in, that's the way it will always progress. And it is a necessity. It's just capitalism is the necessary over the foundation, the plantation, to provide a wonderful socialistic society. That's modern socialism. It's not fighting against capitalism. They have now endorsed it, stating, we've passed our point where it's no longer lucrative. Let's move on to the next step. That's dangerous. It means they're not even going to argue against that which they're opposed to. They're going to say, yeah, we agree. It should have been there.
So even Karl Marx kind of agreed that, yes, capitalism is necessary to get to socialism, but he thought that eventually capitalism could be removed and societies would be self-sustaining and capitalist and socialist.
Yeah.
But the current thought, because there's been so much history, it's too unavoidable to deny that, yes, in order to keep a system that is socialist or communist, you have to have capitalism as the backbone. You can't excise all of capitalism and expect your society not to collapse.
Correct.
That's the lessons they've learned after 100 million deaths, and they're finally like, oh, well, it only took. We're kind of thinking that at 99 million, but then when we got that 100 million, we're like, okay, yeah, capitalism is required.
So the modern socialists that I've been talking to just on various chats and within Discord, I basically said capitalism is a predetermined requirement for socialism. It is what builds up the economy. It's what builds up the capital to support socialism. After which it switches to socialism, and then to communism to regulate when capitalism needs to be regulated to come into effect to add income to support the current social and capitalist state.
Yeah.
As in, understood, economy only works on a capitalist basis. We will simply manipulate it. That's the future mindset of socialism, capitalism. It is no longer the opposite. It is in, we will swell you up and we will embrace it and encumber it.
Yeah.
And you are the lesser of the greater evil.
Yeah, we can't get rid of capitalism, so we will just make all capitalists slaves.
Yes. That's the new mindset. That is going to be the new scary future of socialism. And the only time people are going to feel happy is when they get the idea that through this socialist society, they're now allowed to go out and provide and create. And the only reason is because they are dictated to go out and provide and create in order to boost value, in order to boost the economy. Once sustained, you are now back into the socialist fold, and everything you've created or invented is swallowed up by the greater society, the greater governance. This has gone beyond just being a cog in a machine. Mm-hmm. It's almost like that Matrix aspect where we're looking for the anomaly, the person who can create, abusing them, manipulating them to create, and then once they have created, taking it from them and saying, thanks for being the cog. That's the future of socialism. That's even worse than I originally anticipated, and I've been talking to people over the last 2 weeks, and it scares the crap out of me. And they don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, see, because so socialism, if they actually get what they had originally it's bad, but it has to eventually collapse on itself. What you're talking about, a system like that, which you just described, that's a system that could limp on for decades or centuries and keep going with everybody being under the oppression of that system with no real way to escape. That's the scary part. Because, like, communism, once they got like, hey, we're going full-blown communism, yes, it is hell on earth, but usually such regimes are like 2, maybe 3 decades, and then boom, they cannot. But imagine that, like, hey, 2 or 3 generations inside. Like, most people, like, if you survive, you were there when it started, you were there when it ended. Most of the people, like, they lived through it. Imagine being born when this is still going on, and your great grandfather was also born into this, and your kids are gonna be born while this is still going. That is.
Well, not only that, but then to be lied to.
That would be possible.
That you are part of, say, a revolution or opposition, or part of what spurs society. You are led to believe that your inventions and your progress are going to, help unencumber society or help boost humanity to the betterment. You are simply still just a larger cog. They are now starting to register that everyone is this simple cog, that there are those who come out throughout history, the inventors, the designers, the creators, the artists, and that those cogs have a little special lubricant, a little special freedom until they have bolstered their idea, swallow them back up.
Okay.
That's scary junk.
So we talked about almost everything, and it is a little after 10. So I did mention emoluments, so I'm gonna touch on that. So the Trump's was it was unanimous. It was 3-0. No case for emoluments. So but I think that was the last thing I wanted to say. I think we covered everything because we covered ripping the speech. Yeah, covered everything on the agenda. I did talk about BoJack Horseman, although I do kind of want to do a little more because that scene, while I think that's a powerful scene, that's not the show. And so I want to say, it is one of the funniest and most well written shows on that, in that just ever, I guess I should say. Because and now the jokes kind of run the gamut. So there are the characters are humanoid animals, and so there are a lot of puns and stuff thrown in that. They're kind of like, that's not like super genius, but there are jokes that take episodes to pay off, and then you're like, wow, that was well planned out. But there are also other things that shouldn't have worked as a joke, but it does. So and this show has one of my favorite characters in any show, and it's literally 3 kids stacked on top of each other in a trench coat, and nobody seems to notice except for, I think BoJack kind of notices it, and everybody else just like, this is a normal guy. And his dialogue in the show is so fantastic. It's like, just business stuff, work, and like, all you ever talk about is work. And like, in the little kid voice, it's So it's got, so like I said, it's got like that powerful moment in the show where it's deep and dramatic, but man, it's got these other, like, this is hopefully not too much of a spoiler, but first season, he gets drunk and steals the D from the Hollywood sign. For the rest of the show, everybody keeps saying Hollywood. That, it's an ongoing joke where
I'm just pretty consistent. So
it's an ongoing joke. It's like, if you took the D off the side, it wouldn't change the name of the place, but nope, that's just what we call it now.
Hollywood.
And you after a while, like after it goes on so long, you kind of forget it, and you'll see people this is just the new normal. It's a really well written show. It does have a little lefty in there, but it's got so many other things that I'm like, yeah, the small bits of things that you're kind of like, and like I said, this was the series finale, so it's 6 seasons long, and yeah, really well done the whole way through. It is one of the most consistent shows. So yeah, like, to quote Ricky Gervais, bravo Netflix. That I'm surprised that they were able to. Yeah, I've got kind of a love-hate relationship with Netflix, because for every drag queen cartoon they have on their platform, they have The Witcher and they've got BoJack, and I'm like, man.
Well, I think Netflix is just playing the bigger picture. But they're going with the loudest voice, the loudest community, and they're putting all that stuff out there. Just like, look, we're here. We've got this. Ultimately, they understand that there are some quality stories out there that don't have to fall into it, and they're still saying, dude, that can get a big crowd. So I'm not 100% pleased with Netflix, but as of late, within, say, the last 2 years, they have a lot of quality independent content that I'm very surprised to see. I mean, even just random shows nobody ever even heard of. I thought Altered Carbon was a great show.
Yeah, that was.
I enjoyed that. I binge watched that over an entire weekend. I was like, dude, I like that a lot. That just came out of nowhere. So I think Netflix is like the new Stars, HBO, Premier cable television.
Yeah, but
and it's pandering to an audience, but still understands we got to have some sustenance out here.
Yeah,
we can't
so it like you were kind of just talking about with the communism thing, they understand it. Shows like BoJack, shows like The Witcher, shows like House of Cards before the Spacey thing. It's those and Ozarks. It's those shows that carry the channel, and then they put their passion projects of, oh, we gotta have this show, like 13 Reasons Why. Why is that a show? That's one of the Netflix missteps, from what I can tell. They've got an animated show about drag queens. So who is that supposed to appeal to? Not for kids.
But they've had Skin Wars on there a while, which RuPaul is kind of one of the judges host.
Yeah.
I do enjoy those ones, but it's more just artistic based.
Oh, so that's like tattoos and stuff, right?
It's body painting.
Yeah.
So everybody's acting like nip covers and whatnot. Yeah, even my daughter watched it. It's because she likes the art aspect, as in, what can you draw? Do they look like real animals? Do they look like the background? Are they camouflage?
Okay, yeah.
So I enjoy that a lot.
So it's not so much the sexualization aspect, because the drag queen, it's all about the sexualization aspect.
That up a lot, surprisingly. They show very little of that.
Yeah.
Just good.
Because that's the main reason to pose. It's like, not that they're dressing up as women and all, like, nobody cares about that. It's the fact that everything is so flamboyantly sexualized, and then they're trying to every time they're trying to teach that to ever younger audiences, and I'm like,
well, see, the funny thing is they actually had an episode in the Skin Wars where there was a bunch of drag guys, and they were supposed to pick who, what sort of celebrity they were trying to embody, whether Lady Gaga or Katy Perry or whatever. But there were some hilarious moments. Not everything worked out. One dude who was supposed to be Nicki Minaj, they shoved like a bunch of these weird styrofoam blocks in their shorts, and it looked like the most lumpy ass ever. And the dude walked up and he's like, I wouldn't even put this on Pinterest. I hate this. I wish I'd ignore this completely. I'm so disappointed to be up here. And I was like, that's freaking funny. So it's yeah, they have some aspects of that. It's just more based off the art. So you focus on the art part and see how cool it is. Can you blend someone into a background? I think that's cool. And they also have another like style show, which has nothing to do with drag. It's still, I think half the people who are clothing designers are gay or
Oh yeah, it's
in the LGBT community.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the names of designers, you know, Versace, Gucci, or is Gucci the name?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, but all of it's dudes. All of the most famous fashion designers, not so much hearing about women. It's dudes.
I mean,
they are predominantly male.
Surprising. It might even be more than half the cast of people who are these up and coming designers are within.
Yeah, in the fashion industry itself, it's something like 80% dudes or something like that.
But they were able to focus on the clothing designs, the innovation, the artistic side, and I'm fine with that. You know, if you're gonna have a whole show based off just drag, you're gonna have a whole show based off of just people being gay. I'm probably not gonna watch. It's not something I really even care about, nor do I want to even know about. But I do enjoy art. I do enjoy clothing design, color. Where is humanity going? So if people are that way, that's up to them.
Yeah, I don't care. As long as they're not trying to advertise to kids. And that's what it seems like every time you turn around, there's a new way they're trying to advertise to kids. And I'm like, dude.
I would say for the clothing designer one or even the skin wars, yeah, and maybe it's not quite for kids because obviously half naked people with pasties on, but it is geared towards the art, not the nudity part or the drag part or the LGBT part. It's just the art. And same thing with the clothing design one. And I very much liked it.
All right. So we're going to end on a little more comedy because it's this whole... Oh, no, we mentioned impeachment. I don't think I mentioned acquittal because Trump was acquitted and that... Oh, yeah, because I did mention the vote. Yeah, but acquitted. This is no longer a thing.
Doesn't care.
Yeah.
It was an assumption from months ago that was just like, this is going nowhere.
And so the last video clip I have is from SNL, and I've watched their previous Democrat debate spoofs. This one I thought was their funniest by far, and...
Oh, they got a recent one.
Yeah, this was the New Hampshire one.
Okay, I'll have to check that out then.
Okay, so I've got it queued up to about 1:16 is where I'm starting this, so I'm going to start playing this. I'll be playing about 30 seconds and then jump forward and play another 30-ish seconds or so. But this is fantastic. These are really good jokes I was not expecting from SNL.
Well, I'll be honest. Losing Iowa was a real kick in the nuts, all right? But I am not worried at all because, by the time we get to South Kakalaki, Joe Biden's going to do what Joe Biden does best. Creep up from behind. Just when you think your lead is safe, my numbers are going to sneak up and surprise you with a nice, sweet kiss on the neck.
Mayor Pete, you initially claimed victory in Iowa, and then Senator Sanders claimed victory a few days later, leading to some major infighting. Who do you think really won?
Donald Trump.
I was taking a drink right when he's like, President Trump's gone Super Saiyan. I posted it on a video 2 nights ago. Had a report, and they were running that meme where Trump's like, hey, 2048, 2040.
Oh, yeah, that was his first response after acquittal.
9,000. I was like, well, who knew? In the future, Trump's going to be over 9,000. So I posted that comment like 2 days ago, and he just said it while taking a drink. He's like, Trump went Super Saiyan. I'm like...
Yeah.
It's just hilarious. They took that serious. It showed like 90,000.
Oh, dude, no. What's her face? Maxine Waters was talking about that as if that was he's planning on being Trump or being president for the rest of his life. And I'm like,
for like the next 3,000 years. We can't allow that.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, first off, if Trump tried for a third term, it wouldn't just be Democrats against him. It would be Republicans. It would be everybody against him doing that. Like, dude, we like you. We think you're doing a good job. Third term, no. We're kicking you out. There's no way. Even you're trying to, we'll change the rules to run a third term. No, this is not a situation like Theodore Roosevelt where people will be clamoring for a third term. We're like, 2 terms and you're out. That's it. We're not changing the rules just because we like what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's why I thought it was funny. Is they actually picked up on that. They're just so weird of SNL. The Trump went Super Saiyan.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just posted that comment. Oh, he's over 9,000.
Yep. All right. Yeah. So get to the Biden's response, man. Dude, that is good. I am. Yeah. So I paused it at about 1:53. So let me know once you catch up to there. But man, that is. And then I think the next part I'm skipping forward to is. Alright, right around there. So did you get to the 2-minute mark yet? Or about the 2-minute? Hello? Did you mute yourself?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was playing the video in the background. I'm at like a 1:35 is my time mark. I don't remember that guy's name. He's doing Joe Biden. But basically...
He's not as good as Woody Harrelson's Biden, but the jokes he's giving...
Woody Harrelson's Biden was like
perfect.
Amazing. Just
Jason Sudeikis.
Accurate. Yeah. Crazy. So this is funny. This is what was that Sudeikis guy?
Yeah.
Is it Jason
Sudeikis
or something? It's not bad. There's some funny jokes. I mean, he's talking about like ripping people from
sneak
behind.
up behind you.
Yeah,
My number's gonna do what I do best. Come up and sneak up from behind. Or creep up from behind.
Man,
Is it better?
I am.
Yeah. So did you get to the 1:53?
This is going to be the norm, but I am really hoping if SNL can do that going forward, just ripping on everybody and stop being so damn partisan and so damn PC, they can redeem themselves because that's what made SNL great to begin with.
Yeah, it's like
they didn't care about the politics. It was just let's make absurd what is absurd in society.
It's the Don Rickles formula for comedy. I'm going to make fun of everybody in the audience. Then it's funny. If it's I'm only going to make fun of one group or this small sub, then it's not funny. If you're like, well, I'm going to make fun of everybody except for these, then that's what has. That's why I haven't been so.
The only reason you're chuckling is because you're only on the one side and the rest is not funny.
Yeah,
you're not laughing.
And a lot of their previous sketches along this lines have been kind of like, okay, all of these jokes are one-sided. It doesn't feel so funny that way. It seems more like bullying. But this one, shots are fired all around. This is a circular firing squad, and I thought it was great.
So fingers crossed. I am really hoping SNL just picks that up and says, you know, screw it, screw PC.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to being just funny and ripping on
just everything
in society, just overall. They went so PC. What was it? Even in like the late 90s, and never fully dropped off that and garbage. I think one commonality that, regardless if you're on the Republican side or the Democrat side, if someone just presents something that is obviously just completely stupid, and they emphasize how stupid that is, and they're not trying to pander, they just emphasize that it's stupid, both sides are going to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they need to stick with it. Don't pander to one side or the other. Just point out stupidity.
All right.
I hope SNL goes that route. So, yeah. Sorry.
So what's the timestamp?
I'm at 1:35.
Okay. Keep playing until you get to 1:55-ish.
1:50.
That's a good joke, man. I'm like, wow, I was not expecting that. All right, good joke.
I couldn't even make it there. Sorry. A nice sweet kiss on the neck. What?
Oh.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, yeah. So all the Biden jokes in this one are great.
Just let me just give you a nice sweet kiss on the neck. I mean, man, that's not even from recent. That's just like forever. That's Biden.
Why they ever thought he could be the front runner, I will never know.
I was so close to remembering the whole Biden massaging Biden's shoulders, and he's like, "I just want to point out that's not accurate.
This video was doctored.
This is not real. It's doctored."
Really? I would Joe Biden doesn't have an identical
Sure, that
twin?
was your brother, Joe Nathan.
All right.
And those two of you. Sweet kiss on the neck. Oh man, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at 148.
All right.
Resume.
Yeah, they've got a lot of those in this sketch, and I'm surprised.
Yeah, 5 seconds. What do you think really was Donald Trump?
Yep. And just the way he's just like, yep, so matter of fact about that. Just...
Oh man,
Donald Trump.
That was like harsh, that one.
Yeah.
You crack a smile. You think what Donald Trump didn't even think about it.
All right. So I jumped forward a little bit here to about the 4 minute and 50 seconds. So I'm gonna play. You can maybe watch the whole thing on your own. Well, I'm gonna comment on a couple of these jokes. So, dude, so 4 minutes and 49 seconds.
Okay, yeah. 4:49. Gotcha.
You should hear me chew.
No. You're not gonna outpour me, all right? My campaign's broke as hell. My biggest contributions are the pennies from loafers and whatever the concerned moms of Bernie Bros can afford.
Oh, man. Like, okay. I don't like the Kate McKinnon, but the hand gestures and everything and that Elizabeth Warren, I'm like, she's embodying the cringe of Warren. No, you're not gonna outpour me. Oh, I was like, okay, finally they're firing some legitimate shots at Warren, because I think that they've been doing kind of like, stabbing other candidates and other, criticizing Ye and criticizing Tulsi. And then they've been like, oh, here's a light pat on Warren. And this one, like, yes, that is a legitimate joke at her expense, finally.
Well, so the odd thing is, I think she actually does phenomenal as Warren.
Yeah.
She has done phenomenal as Clinton. Mm-hmm. And she, I even saw that one weird Bieber junk she done a while ago where she was,
and you're like,
this is my pee-pee.
That's surprising.
Playing on the drums, like a commercial.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. So
one of the funniest things I ever saw on SNL.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I think she's hilarious, but I can see where I think the staff is stifled on potentially what they can and cannot say.
Yeah, and it seems like they're kind of loosening up on that, maybe?
The DNC is screwed, so it doesn't matter what we say. We got to run with this. This is kind of their one spike in their career where they can just, run with it, because as absurd as it is, it's either going to match or it's going to fall short. But I think they're not under the presupposition that DNC has any chance in 2020.
Yeah, so they've stopped, instead of trying to use this as a platform to launch these candidates and build their reputations, maybe they're kind of like, we're just going to try to make it funny. Because we can't do...
All we can do is funny now going forward, because
we're not helping anybody politically. There's no point. So...
And I hope they learn their lesson going forward. I mean, I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. Mm-hmm. When some dumb junk is going on, Just that's what society wants. Point that out.
Mm-hmm.
Not every Republican candidate is the saint from on high, nor is any DNC candidate the enemy of the people. But
All right. So I'm at like 5 minutes and 13 seconds.
This is hilarious.
Yeah, I'm about 5 minutes 13 seconds. I'm gonna play about 30-ish more seconds, and then that's it. And then we'll call it a night. But you can watch the whole thing because there are a lot of other jokes in there that are pretty good. But this was where it's probably one of my favorite jokes.
This is my favorite part of the debate, where we ask about winning the black vote. I'm going to start with you, Mayor Pete.
Oh, man. Look, people, say I'm not very popular among minorities. They've been referring to me as Mayo Pete. But I assure you, I'm not that spicy.
Dude, that... Oh, man, the Pete Buttigieg joke. Yeah, that guy is... I think... Right.
Mayo Pete! He said he's not that spicy.
Yeah, I was like, that's the best joke in the whole skit. I'm not that spicy.
I just wish they wouldn't. I'm not that spicy.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I'm like, dude, yeah, I've got to include this in the next stream because I was like, dude, keep doing that.
Okay. For anybody that's watching it, us laughing at SNL, in the last caucus debate, the Iowa caucus debate, Buttigieg's team went and gathered a slew of African-American people and parked them behind him during
so there's a row
speech before anything was announced. Majority of them said, we don't even vote for Buttigieg. They just grabbed us and put us back there. The people standing behind him didn't even vote for him.
Oh.
They were put there so it looked like he had a large black supportive vote in Iowa.
Yeah.
And anybody in Iowa is gonna look and say,
no, we smell that. It smells a little bit like bullshit.
You got like 99% of the black vote in Iowa. Yeah, they were just talking, standing around their friends, and he had his group.
Yeah, his staff members or whatever. Yeah.
Stand here for a moment, and they're just sitting there like, okay. Spicy mayo. Mayo Pete.
No, but it's like, yeah. So, how do you get more of the black vote? Oh man, just, the whole delivery.
I don't understand that. Ugh, so mind blowing. Do you know why Trump actually has any of the black vote? It's because he said, "I'm going to secure some jobs." And I don't care if you're black or Hispanic or whatever. Now you got some jobs. And they're like, okay, that's all we were asking for. Done deal. Stop pandering. Most of the black population is so done with pandering. It's been decades. They just want to be called Americans, which they are, like the rest of everybody else. The rest of the country gets it.
Yeah, so...
Pete.
So yeah, that was the last joke I wanted. Yeah, the mayo, and I'm not that spicy. But you mentioned something there that I'm gonna kind of end on this thought. He had a really high percentage of black people voting for him in 2016, Trump.
Yeah.
And he didn't have so much as a Hispanic vote. But one of the things he said on the campaign trail is he said, "What have you got to lose?" And that's why he got the higher numbers than like the past 3 or 4 Republican presidents. And 2020, that number is going to go higher. Like, there's no way it doesn't go higher because there is lowest black unemployment and highest employment and highest, like, the black community and the Hispanic community are doing so much better now.
Period. Just
across the board,
everywhere.
But people that were on the fence or maybe against him in 2016. He has turned around so many of them just by, like, hey, like, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the Hispanic communities that were like, I'm not gonna vote for Trump. But after seeing, like, okay, 4 years, I haven't been deported, because I'm an actual legal citizen and all that sort of thing. Those people that were against him or on the fence, they have no objection anymore. Because the biggest criticism against him in 2016 is he doesn't have a record. He has no experience. We can't know if he's going to do a good job. What criticism do they have against him going in? Is, well, he's racist. I don't care what the numbers about black unemployment and Hispanic unemployment.
3 years as a president, and he has destroyed so many records. The strange thing is, I voted Trump as kind of a dark horse candidate. I was expecting, hey, let's at least keep some conservative ideas.
And at least it won't be Hillary, right?
Here, he has abolished everything that's happened in a negative light within 25 years. He just said, you know what? I did this in 3. The economy spiked up. Unemployment of every race ever in the U.S., all-time low. And then, in his State of the Union, he brings up these minority people, the Tuskegee Airmen, and he brings up the girl and her mom, the single mom, who is trying to pick a school because she wants what's best for her daughter.
And then the Hispanic ICE agent. Yeah.
It's like, how many times mainstream media want to say dude's a racist, they're looking at that and saying, what?
Racist?
Vote for the racist because I'm going to do better. You can call him what you want, but...
Yeah, he could be racist, but he's the most ineffective racist in the history of, ever. Because
the worst racist ever.
I hate you so much, I'm going to make you do better financially. Okay. With enemies like these, who needs friends?
I would hope at this point Americans...
Yeah, okay, so the last thing about that is
always been on the up and up. I think most Americans are there just saying, let's just keep things at a civil level. I think what we're seeing is that mainstream media is finally being called out for all their lies. And at this point, they can lie all they want, and the rest of the public can say, I see it even in your lies. You brought it up on CNN, and I can see how great he's doing while you're telling me how bad he's doing, but
dude,
my eyes are telling me something completely different.
Well, okay, so this, I keep saying this will be my last thing I say about this, but the reason that Nancy Pelosi gave for ripping up the State of the Union speech is she said there was lies. I was looking for something that wasn't a lie, and I couldn't find anything. And I'm like, what was...
factual inaccuracies, and she couldn't stand for it.
Yeah, and I'm like, what factual inaccuracies? Is there not the lowest unemployment amongst the black communities? Is there not the lowest unemployment against Hispanics? Is not...
Okay. Her 2 responses are either there were factual inaccuracies and I couldn't stand for it, which that's not really true at all for anything you said, or I'm a bitter bitch.
Yeah, that's the more likely.
It's the optics. They just had to go with the nicer, more PC term.
And final thought, I'm sure you saw the Tim Pool video where he's talking about this, and he's like, C-SPAN had a bunch of callers calling into C-SPAN after that, and they're like, yeah, lifelong Democrat.
Yeah,
I'm not voting Democrat after that.
Democrat Party, I'm done with it.
Yeah, me and my family, we said nope.
They got inundated with calls saying, you know what, F Democrat Party.
Yeah, so her little pre-planned tantrum has so backfired for them. And all right, but it is almost 10:30. It is time to it's over 10:30. It's 10:35. So it's time to wrap this up. And Nancy Pelosi, I'm pretty sure Joe Biden didn't realize he was talking to her, but she is definitely a lying, dog-faced pony soldier.
Yeah, maybe he thought he was talking to Pelosi and was like, oops. This is just a regular...
Oh, that's just somebody who was
in a regular
audience.
Public meeting. Oops.
Lying, dog-faced pony soldier. All right. Thanks for anybody who ends up watching this or who did end up, viewing this live. And we will try again next week. And
ultimately, I'm going to say, don't vote Trump. Vote for what's real. Vote for what you feel is best for America. Just use your minds.
Yep.
You don't have to be a Trump supporter. Just wake up.
Yeah, and even though I think Trump's doing a fantastic job, I'm not voting in 2020. I didn't even bother to register, so I...
Oh, yeah, this is not... I mean, we seem to be on pro-Trump side. It's just... He's a decent Republican candidate, but you vote for who you want.
Yep.
If you want to go out, vote for who you want. Just don't be duped into garbage. That's all.
Yep. All right. See you next week.